And the render distance starts here. Good morning, Joel.
Good morning, Johnny, and good morning, the rest of the internet.
Yeah, yes. We're sending this one out free of charge to everybody, not just the patrons this time around, because of course it's episode 400 of the show. But like usual, we're going to do our little render distance pre-show where we have a bit of a catch up before we get into the main show proper. And this is going to be our big episode 400 Q&A. We are going to be touching on Minecraft news. We're going to be touching a little bit on what we've been doing in Minecraft, but we're probably going to keep that brief because we have a bunch of questions thanks to people who've written in and everything. But before that, any fun news from the weekend or the last week or so, Joel?
Well, my birthday was on Wednesday,
Oh, of
and
course, yes.
so yeah, it was a chill day. It's the middle of a work week. I did a stream. I went to the gym. Like all my friends are married with kids and have jobs that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
9 to 5. So like you really don't end up doing much. I'm gonna go see the Project Hail Mary film with Steven tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
I hung out with family for brunch yesterday.
Oh, cool.
And like I said, and I did see my sister on my birthday. She dropped off. She bakes me a cake for my birthday. We don't do big gifts. We're old enough. We're just like, you know what? Just the cake is lovely. Like that's more
Yeah.
than enough with your busy schedule. So what's funny about that though is that like I'm not sick of cake. Don't get me wrong, but I'm really starting to feel guilty with how much cake I have eaten because what I
Sure.
used to do was have birthday parties, and Andrea would bring the cake, and I would have 10 or 12 people here. We'd all have cake, and then I'd have like 4 or 5 slices left for the weekend or whatever. Ever since COVID, I haven't had a birthday party,
Mm.
so it's just me with a full-size cake. And I
Yeah.
gave, like, Andrea's request was like cut off a big chunk for her and my niece to take home, so I gave that to them yesterday. I gave a similar slice, like a large slice, to my dad and his partner. But other than that, it's been all me, and there's not that much left. So
Mm-hmm.
I have enjoyed, but I have also eaten an entire birthday cake. It kind of feels like those Garfield cartoons where like he takes a slice of lasagna and gives that to John, and then takes the whole lasagna and walks
Yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah.
Like that's kind of what happened. So that was fun. And the brunch yesterday, we went to a local place called Pure and Simple, which is like a fancier brunch place. They do like crepes and French toast with like fruit and English cream and stuff. And I got the French toast crisp, which has fresh strawberries, blueberries, whipped cream, English cream, and a raspberry coulis, I think is how you pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
drizzled on top. And it's all panko breaded French toast. So like it's very
Oh,
crispy. It was really good. I've had it once before there, and I was just like, you know what? I know it feels like kind of dessert for breakfast, but why not, right? Like you're
sure.
celebrating your
Yeah.
birthday, you go out on a limb. So I had a lot of fun with that, and cleaned the plate because it was really, really good. And it looks like a lot, but because like there's a lot of fruit, and it's not there's no syrup. Like I'm not putting maple syrup or anything on this, so it wasn't as heavy as it looks. It's a lot lighter, which is good because like something like that with the plate so large, if it was really dense and rich, like you'd be so full about halfway
Mm-hmm.
through. So, but it was a good time.
Nice, nice. Yeah, always nice when you can do a variety of stuff. I think when you get
Yeah,
to our advanced age, and
you did
let's
it
be real.
again,
Yeah, I mean,
throwing us both under the bus.
I feel bad that I have to keep doing it, especially since like I'm going to be 39 in May, so I'm approaching 40 soon. Not that
Hmm.
that feels like a big deal for me. Like I'm not that worried about it the way that people sort of fret
Yeah,
about those big milestones, you know. And I feel like lately, because I've just been getting back into like an exercise routine, I've been on the rowing machine every other day. Like I feel like I'm getting in
nice.
some of the best shape of my life, and I'm like, why not do that right before I turn 40? But also, yeah, I feel like it's nice to have that level of variety instead of it just being like one day on which you have to celebrate your birthday, otherwise you've missed it and it's gone, and that's the day that you get all the presents and the excitement and everything like that. I
Yeah,
think it's nice that some people have the opportunity to celebrate, like some people will be like, it's my birthday week, and then they make the week all about them, but
yeah,
instead it's much more like everyone's got busy routines, everyone's got families and lives and that kind of stuff, but it's just nice to spend those moments and that people will take the time when they have the time in
yeah,
proximity of your birthday. And then it feels a little bit more spread out and it feels a little bit more like, people are making the effort instead of everything all happening on one day when you feel like you can't really take it all in. And so, yeah, instead of the giant rush, I kind of like having a variety of activities. Like, what I'm hoping happens for me this year is just that I get to spend the time, like, at dinner with my partner. Maybe we'll go see a movie or some other sort of, like, activity, but then I'll see some of my friends later in the week. We'll play a tabletop game. Like, we'll just do kind of a bit more of a chill, catchy up-y kind of week. And like that'll be really nice because I've also got friends coming into town towards the end of the month for Brighton Fringe Festival, where a lot of like comedy and theatre shows get put on locally. And so I've got friends staying with me who are doing shows and just, you know, crashing on the Hemnus behind me. And, you know, it's just going to be fun to see them throughout this month. And so I'm sort of treating that as like, you know, I get to see a few extra people. That feels kind of celebratory in itself just because it's a nice occasion to see people rather than anything to do with like birthday celebrations and everybody having to be in the same place at the same time.
Because your birthday is coming up in like what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's May 17th.
Yeah.
So yeah, like
right.
a couple of weeks from now, basically on a Sunday this year as well, which is you know, it's either like good because it's the weekend and more people are available, or it's bad because on Sundays in the UK a lot of stuff closes early. We don't have like as much stuff going on Sundays, and there are like trading laws about when places can be open. So restaurants and stuff would be fine, but yeah, if everything feels a little bit quieter on a Sunday.
Yeah, totally. It's been a long time since I've had a birthday on a weekend, you know, 4 years or more, because it was a Wednesday this year. So, I mean, I'm not sure where the last leap year was, but like I definitely had a couple of years where it was like Friday, Saturday, but then ever since then, it's just been, you know, kind of celebrating it whenever you can. I'm approaching the other round number. You're approaching 40. 40 was a long time ago for me. I had one friend, and I'll give a shout out to Mur, because the only person to not make an old joke was Mur. Because Mur's older than I am, and then she wasn't sure how old I was. She's like, "How old are you turning this year?" And I was like, 47. She's like, just a young lad. I was like, yeah. We're like, if we weren't friends before, we're much closer now. Just teasing her and like, thanks. I appreciate that. It's funny. I don't talk about it often because sometimes I worry, not in like a real sense, but like sometimes I wonder if like younger Minecraft players, when they're watching content creators that are working in the space, it's like, oh wow, this dude is older than my dad. You know, like if that bears like, you know, if that bears in mind when they're thinking about the content that they're watching. But at the same time, like when you look at people that I started following, some of the Hermitcraft people, some of the youngest Hermitcraft people when I started watching are now 30.
Yeah,
like I'm pretty sure Mumbo said that he's either 30 or fast approaching it. And I was like, I don't think of him as 30 because I don't see him very often. Like you're just hearing him and then watching the, you know, the very cartoony content that he makes. And I was just like, oh wow, I've been watching Mumbo for a long time because when I first started watching, like I feel like he was in his early 20s. You know?
Yeah, Gemini Tay showed up in his recent video and was like, Mumbo, we need advice on turning 30. Me and Pearl are the only two on the server who are still not 30 yet, and it's happening soon. So like, and he was like, it's fine, except, you know, in the first couple of weeks of my 30s, I had a terrible migraine, I got sick in some other way, and then I nearly got struck by lightning. And so he was like, 30 has actually been kind of unkind to me. But yeah, no, it was great. It was a very funny conversation. But yeah, like milestones like that, they tend to bother some people that I'm not that fussed. Like it's always like, you know, you're becoming another day older. Really, it's like, you know, the milestone happens, but like, you know, you're still in the same body you were for the last 365 days. Like it's the same old thing, right?
Yeah, I hear you on being in good shape too. Like I mean, like I think it's pretty well known that I train a lot at the gym, and I mean, I'm a little heavier now than I have been in the past, but the last few years, like I would say in my 40s, I've certainly been in better shape than I would be with the exception of maybe my early 20s, just because of how intense, you know, and it's a time thing. Like, you know, when you're going to university and you have that extra time, if you have the motivation to go and train, like you can put that time in. But then when I was working on my career in art and animation and then podcasting, like I was just spending so much time working. I just didn't have time or access to it all. I would jog and I would do some stuff. I was in good shape, but I wasn't in like what I would consider like the best shape. But the last few years, post-COVID, with the gym being more accessible, me having more time, like writing my own schedule, not working for clients, kind of like doing my own thing, I've really been able to prioritize the gym. And I definitely feel stronger and in better shape than I have been in the past. And it's fun. Like I like the muscle maturity that comes when you've been lifting for 20 years. It's just like you can grab heavy stuff and just lift it. And it's a lot of fun to do that kind of thing around the house. Like you're vacuuming the couch, you just lift it up and vacuum underneath it. Like stuff like that is just kind of fun to realize like, oh yeah, this isn't something that I have to struggle with. And like my parents are both 80, and my mom was a nurse for years and still continues to work out every day. I mean, it's at an 80-year-old level, but she still does it. And I think it's one of the reasons where like if she has a little fall or she breaks her wrist, like she's back in it after a couple of months. And whereas like that kind of injury to somebody else that's 80 that's not active takes a year to recoup from or longer. And it kind of is a testament to like staying active, like whether it's, with you, with your cycling and your rowing, or like anybody else. Like if you're using your physical activity, then as you get older, life just becomes a lot easier when it throws curveballs at you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like my grandparents were fairly active. They were like walkers, and my granddad was building bits of their house until he was in his 80s. I'm pretty sure. Like he was building a porch and stuff, and like he'd built their house kind of from the ground up, and so he was always pretty active, pretty healthy, hard worker. And like obviously having the jobs that we now do, where like I'm sat in an office chair playing video games,
Yeah,
I'm like I've got to do something, because like genuinely just being on my feet in retail jobs and stuff has, I feel the difference now just in terms of like the way my body feels and moves around, and I'm like I have to do something to offset the fact that I'm in a chair a lot of the time. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have that time in my day being my own boss, and like be able to get on the rowing machine for like an hour in the morning before I can take a shower and start taking notes for the podcast, and then be in the chair too to do this. And like it feels like obviously in a different set of circumstances I wouldn't have the time, but I feel like I'd be rushed off my feet by other things, and maybe that would contribute to like the amount of natural kind of exercise I would get anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember the stat, but it's a certain percentage of like your muscle density that you start to lose. I think it's after age 40 or 45. And the only way to offset that is to do some sort of resistance and or challenging physical activity. Like weightlifting walking is not enough. But like doing something like, a rowing machine or cycling is better because there's more tension. You're going to have like uphills and downhills and like different variations. But I always hear on podcasts when I'm like doing research for fitness for people in my age bracket, it's always just like lift stuff. And I saw actually it's a British news story. I'll see if I can find the link to send it to you. It was a woman that got her senior parents into powerlifting. And these are two elderly people that had a hard time moving around, her mother specifically. But now she's like deadlifting, bench pressing, and squatting at appropriate weights for her body type and her age, but her father is also doing the same sort of things, and they've gone up in weight. Like they've actually increased their mobility, they feel better, and they're lifting heavy. Now it's all under a professional powerlifting coach. They have a program, like it's all above board. They're not just kind of going at it willy-nilly. But and she's like a journalist, so she was doing these little YouTube vignettes, very professionally done, explaining like it's just been so cool to see my parents have like a new lease on life in their 80s or late 70s. And it's really, really cool. That's like it's never too late to start, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like that's also the approach I'm taking in, is like, I'm not gonna be one of those people who's like, I have to rely on the fact that I had like a younger body once kind of thing, and like, allow that to carry me through. Like it's all gonna change. And so yeah, I'm trying to take charge of that a little bit more, I think, as I get into my 40s, and that's sort of starting off on the right foot, I guess, once I reach that milestone.
I feel like I've asked you this recently, but I don't remember what you said. Did you play sports growing up? Like, did you do like football or anything like that? No,
I was not an athletic kid in the slightest, and I feel like that's contributed to like the sense now that I need to get in shape, because I'm like, if not now, then when? So yeah, like I was never really. I liked sports in the sense that I enjoyed like the camaraderie of some of it, but I was never really part of that camaraderie in the same way. I liked stuff like tennis because that was more of a one-on-one thing rather than a team sport, and the ball was going to come at you at some stage, whereas I was always the one who was like passed over for like football or whatever. I think the sport I probably got most into was having come back from the States, where I lived for like a year when I was 11. I got a little bit into baseball, and we don't really have baseball in the UK. There's the sort of short bat version called rounders that we tend to play, and that's not anywhere close, but it's at least a bat and ball sport that just involves running around and kind of, earning runs for a team. And so I was good at that because my hand-eye coordination was good, probably also from playing video games. And so I liked baseball, but obviously with the UK not having the enthusiasm for it, I never had the opportunity to pursue that any further than just using the experience a little bit on the sports field at school. But my body type was never especially athletic. I didn't have much of an opportunity to train. It also wasn't really what the people I was friends with were all that into. So I would start cycling around a little bit, and maybe I'd get some exercise that way, but never really got more athletic than that in my youth.
Yeah, I played basketball for team sports just because I was 6 foot tall when I was 14, so like it made sense. And then I got into weightlifting and bodybuilding in my late teens, and that kind of took over. Like same with you. Like I mean, I enjoyed the team sport. I wasn't passed over, but I certainly like preferred the solo stuff. So
Yeah.
my family was golfers, so like my sister and myself and my parents all golfed when we were like young kids, like 12, 13 through like 16. But then I took the solo sport and went into bodybuilding, and then that was kind of like where I mean, like at a junior level, I never really went too far with it. But the lifestyle of it and the lifting style of it is something I've kept up for my entire life. But the team sport, basketball, was the one thing. So I played a little bit of baseball when I was really young, but like not old enough to get serious about it, like under 10. So like it was just fun stuff to get kids out and active and hand-eye coordination, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I probably should have. My buddy Chad and I always say we should have gone out for the football team, like American football team style in high school, because then I probably could have played in university. But just for whatever reason, we just decided that wasn't for us. So it's hard at that age too, because there's like cliques and there's different reasons for not joining teams, that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I heard that Tango from the Hermitcraft server is getting back into hockey at his age as well.
Yeah.
And like I think Impulse and them all went like ice skating like when they were all together in Seattle after the Hermitcraft charity event. There were a couple of like social videos posted of them with varying levels of skill. Obviously, I think Gemini Tay is like a former figure skater, or at least like had a very kind of keen interest in figure skating. So she was like skating rings around most of the others, and everyone else had like the little seals that you can kind of have to help you balance so you're not like falling a whole bunch, and people were like goofing around with those. But it seems like there's a few different levels of ability. But yeah, Tango is getting back into ice hockey, and is like, I don't know if he's joined like a local team or something like that, but I think it's nice to have the approach of like never say never when it comes to that stuff, and like be able to connect with people in your local area who are probably like the same age and still have a passion for that stuff, who aren't going to take it like super competitively and super seriously, but also like give you a reason to push yourself and try new stuff like that.
I played we called it intramural ball in university, so obviously not on the varsity team, but there was 2 levels to the intramurals. Like the top level were basically the people that didn't make the university team but could play at that level. There just wasn't enough spots. And I wasn't playing at that level. But anybody that played in like junior high and high school that wanted to have like not a serious game, but an organized game, well, like you're trying to win, but like you're not like roughing up other people or playing super aggressively, that kind of stuff. No one's trying to get injured. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that because it had been a while since I'd played, and not playing with adults. Like when I was in high school, like you're playing with people your own age, but everybody is a teenager. So like at university, everybody was like between 19 and 21. So like that was fun, especially when you had guys that were part of organized teams. So it's not like you're just playing pickup ball where like some people might have played on a team, but other people are just like shooting in the driveway. Whereas this was a lot more organized. We didn't have a coach, but it was a lot more like we would do zone defense or man on man and stuff like that. And it was just kind of like a fun mental exercise. And I mean, especially in university where I went at Mount A, like winters there started in October and ended in April. Like it
Yeah.
was snow. There's nothing to do outside. So like any kind of inside gym activity was great. And that's good for, like when you get busy professionally too, like you're talking about Tango, like it's probably a really good excuse to hang out with a bunch of guys and, they probably have some team dinners and stuff like that. And everybody's family get to know one another. Like it's a great way to be social with rec sports, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's something that I found with the tabletop RPG stuff is like, you just need an excuse to go out and meet new people once you're a certain age, especially with the careers that we have. So, makes perfect sense. Well, now we've exercised the body. How about we exercise the brain and get on with the rest of the podcast?
Yes, it is the big one, the big 400. My intro this week.
May the 4th be with you, everybody.
Yes, that's right. Starting the show in 3, 2. Welcome to the Spawn Chunks. This is episode number 400, recorded on Monday, May 4th, 2026. This is a podcast all about Minecraft. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify in video format and in audio on your favorite podcasting platform. If you're enjoying the show, please consider subscribing wherever you're listening or watching. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me as always is my friend Johnny, who is being fitter as he gets older.
Try my best, at least. And we've been talking about that in the render distance, but you know that already if you've listened to the full version of this, which is going out to everybody this time around. Obviously, if you've skipped ahead, you've missed out on the conversation that Joel and I have had about all kinds of like fitness hobbies and stuff that we've gotten into more recently, what Joel's been doing for his birthday week, and what I have planned for the rest of the month. And that's usually what happens on the render distance, the extended version of the podcast. If you like that and want to get a little bit more of that, consider supporting the show on Patreon. That's at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. You also get access to events that we don't always release publicly, like the monthly Minecraft Hangouts. We had one of those on the last Saturday of April. The next one will be coming up the last Saturday of May. We also have a quarterly hangout where we share the behind-the-scenes facts and figures, the download numbers, the YouTube metrics, all of that fun inside baseball stuff about the podcast. But the monthly hangouts are where our patrons get to share what they've been up to in Minecraft that month, so it's always a good time regardless. You also have the opportunity to take advantage of our episode 400 Patreon promo. You can use the promo code 400, that is just the number 400, from now until Friday, May 15th. That will get you 20% off your first month supporting us on Patreon. So it's an excellent time to take advantage of. It's not quite an anniversary discount, but it's more or less the century discount as we move into episodes 400 and beyond.
Definitely a big milestone. I mean, we've been doing this very consistently for almost 8 years now, so it's fun to celebrate, and that's what we're going to be doing today. And one of the reasons we're able to make these milestones is because we have a lovely bunch of people that like to listen to us every week. So we're going to be celebrating with an AMA style email episode, a bunch of questions from the listeners and from members of the Minecraft community that we're going to get to. But first, we also have some Snapshot news and a few other things that happened over the week that we should touch on before we get into the email deep dive.
Yes, we might as well do our quick login so that we can chat about what's new in our Minecraft lives. And I can go first since I have very little to share other than that the dig is done and David is now finally in progress. I've got a screenshot here that is not the most up-to-date version, but at least gives people the general idea of what I've been working on. I'll make sure to include some more up-to-date screenshots when we do the video version of the show and the show notes. But I built the rest of the first module, have done some troubleshooting, a couple of redstone timings, a couple of repeaters needed a couple extra ticks added to them, but we had our first successful test on Sunday's live stream, and this can now age, I think, 72 blocks of copper in this. So this is like 1/4 of like a massive area that's going to be all covering the floor, and then we're going to build that up 2 more layers, and by the end of that it should be able to age a full shulker box or full single chest of copper all in one go. Yeah, it's a lot of copper. it's a lot. And I think that might actually, 72 might be inaccurate because I think it might be 144 for one of those modules, just based on the maths, because I think 72 is what you can fit into 4 rows of it. And I was just testing 4 rows to make sure that they worked. But yeah, I've been working away at this. The goal the entire time has been to have a space that I could build this redstone contraption in to begin with, and I'm really happy that just working from screenshots I was able to puzzle through the bits that haven't maybe made sense to me since I built this a couple of years ago, more or less. And yeah, just really happy that it's on the way at this point.
Yeah, this looks massive, man. Like it's really cool to see the space so clear and open and ready for the modules. And this must look and feel really cool when it's in motion. Like I know obviously they have to sit and age for a while, but when things are aged and start to be moved around, that has to be a really cool feeling.
Yeah, the thing that makes me really happy is watching the flying machines do their thing, because I've got a couple of timing circuits in to make sure that once one flying machine brings this massive slab of copper around and it gets taken off by these rows of sticky pistons, and then the flying machines at one end trigger to take it down into the machine where it gets spread out by 4 blocks. The big flying machine has like a timer that it waits for just enough time that it doesn't interfere with any of those flying machines picking up the copper on its way back. And so there's like elements of that it feels like watching a loom in motion, whether you have the shuttle kind of
Right.
going across and all of the individual threads kind
Hmm.
of being woven in and stuff. It just like everything works in tandem so nicely. And then once 4 of those rows get returned as fully oxidized copper, there's another flying machine that's triggered remotely that brings everything back to a central area where the player can harvest it. And all of that just happens with such like smooth running once it's all built and put together. I haven't encountered any issues where a flying machine will just interrupt another one and it kind of causes a traffic jam throughout any of that. The one bit of troubleshooting I had to do ended up with all of the copper ending up like continuing with the flying machine instead of having been picked up, and that broke a little bit of redstone down the end of the machine that I had to fix. But outside of that, everything went really smoothly. So fortunately, it seems like I haven't skipped any of the stages in this, which is good because now I have to do it 11 more times. So at
Oh
least this
wow.
is practice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you have to keep all of these chunks loaded when the flying machines are flying around? Like, do you have to like turn them off before you leave the area?
Yes, I mean the flying machines wouldn't need to be turned off because most of the time they are stationary anyway. But
Right.
what I plan to do is grid chunk load this entire thing so it will continue aging copper even when I'm not there, because then I can just leave
Nice.
it effectively, going AFK or just going to a different part of the world. I don't know what loading an area this size is going to do to the performance of my world, so that's something else that's of consideration. But really, all it should be doing is random ticking those chunks until the copper finishes aging, at which point a couple of flying machines might go and that might cause a bit of an issue. But we'll see what happens when it's built out to full size. If I need to just AFK in this area, I kind of planned for that with the original design anyway, because I didn't know that random ticks would be separated from player proximity, which they now are. So there's more
Right.
opportunity for me to have a bit of extra fun with it and do the remote chunk loading thing. But I'm just waiting to see whether that's feasible and whether that's going to cause any other issues with the machine further down the line.
Yeah, the chunk loading is more for the aging of the copper as opposed to the movement of the machines. Like that
Yeah,
happens so infrequently. It's more about getting the copper to age. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I just it's so cool to see like these football stadium sized holes in the ground that are going to be filled with this thing, and especially because I know that, I mean, obviously as a builder you're probably going to also decorate, this, or at least stuff that's around it or on top of it. So that's going to be really fun to see too.
Yeah, at the very least, I need to slab the entire area because this place spawns a lot of slimes, let me tell you. But thankfully, those haven't interfered too much in the production of the machines so far. So we'll see what opportunity I have for decorating it further down the line.
So for me this week, it's just been a lot of interior work on level 4 of the command center. I have been trying to work out details for landing pads, for the walls, for the elevators as they, as the player arrives to level 4, and also trying to work out the skylight or skylights that I want to have so that's not so dark and dingy. Just trying to work out block materials. I'm mostly going with quartz walls, trying to put in things like honey block accents as well as other frog-light accents with some uh, end rods and different things. I did come up with a cool vent design where I'm just kind of putting some dark blocks behind some quartz slabs, but I've got enough depth in these areas that I can actually push it so that I can put a light inside, so the light catches like the bottoms of the quartz slabs, and then it actually, or actually I think I switched them out to stone slabs, but the slabs that are meant to be like the grates in the vent have some light from below, and everything kind of looks cooler in sci-fi when you light it from below. So I've
Hmm.
been doing a lot of that. I've got different variations on a couple of different walls. I've held off on putting the floor in the entire landing bay because I still need to do the ceiling in the main chamber. And if I do the floor here, I will have a very small, tight crawl space between the ceiling of level 3 and the floor of level 4. And if I don't want to be on a happy gas looking up for hours, I should really try to think of like what I need to do and maybe address it, the ceiling design from above, where I can still walk with like clear sky above. So I'm going to try to do that probably this week coming. I haven't really arrived at any final designs. I do like the sort of floating landing pad look with like a lot of frog lights underneath it. It was inspired by the landing pads in the space stations in No Man's Sky and
Hmm.
some of the bases that you might see players create, because what happens in that, I think I mentioned that last week, is that the ship comes in and lands, but you land facing into the space station, but then it's like a turntable and it just turns your ship so that when you leave, you're pointed in the right direction. So I wanted these to look like they could do that, even though we can't really do that in Minecraft. I wanted that look like this is a separate piece to the floor. It's meant to either raise or lower, or it's meant to rotate or something. And so I've got slabs with frog lights underneath them, and it's just enough to kind of make them look like they're floating and have some kind of like, not ethereal, but it's like kind of like a, I don't know how this is actually functioning vibe to it, which is fun. And I haven't decided on ochre frog lights or pearlescent frog lights for the landing pads. I might do two of each. I don't know. I like the purple and I like the orange. I just haven't decided which one I like the best.
Outside of the frog lights, are there any block choices you've made in this build that really surprised you? The sort of stuff that you wouldn't think worked really well for the sci-fi palette, but have kind of been instrumental to whether it's the interior or the outside look of the command center?
Nothing too surprising. I guess I'm using a lot more terracotta than I thought. Like
Mm.
blue terracotta, which is purple, orange terracotta, things that look like they might be painted. I'm trying to break up the grid of things like quartz, andesite, tough, polish, like all the polished versions that have like the lines on them that look like kind of metal paneling. And
Hmm.
then when you break that up with some color, I say the red sandstone was a surprise. The terracotta, I mean, cyan terracotta is very gray, and so
Yeah.
that kind of works in a lot of sci-fi or industrial type builds. I used a crafter in the middle of the like the crosshair for the landing pad. That's, I don't know if that's really a surprise though. Like when I look at the top of a crafter, I think like, how could I use this in a sci-fi sense? Because it's got like
Hmm.
that red grid on it. I don't think there's anything that's really surprised me. Maybe the frog lights, just because like they are made in and are named as such an organic sounding block, but I've
And kind of
used them as
whimsical
like,
as well, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
and I've used them as like energy. Like it's just kind of, I've used them like, Transformers Energon around the build. So like that's kind of new and unique. I think maybe tough. Tough would be the one thing, was like it's a stone block, but in this context, it reads as like a metal roofing material, and I've used a lot of it. And so I think that's maybe the most surprising, is the fact that I'm using polished tough in a lot of places that I would not have thought this is something I'm going to build like a space command center out of.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the way you've built this is relying heavily on shape language and scale, and like the
Yeah,
block choices have informed that, where some people might end up using a lot more of the shading type of blocks, and you'd end up with like wool and a bunch of snow and things used to shade white areas, when that's not really the style in which you've built this. Like, I think it's something that you've maybe done here and there in like West Hill to give something a bit more character and change up the blocks
sure.
a bit, like when you were using like composters in a roof and things like that. But I think
Yeah.
that with the style you've gone with this one, it's a lot more kind of clean lines, everything the same material, and that almost gives that sci-fi sense that it's like manufactured, built to last, kind of clean and polished and everything, right?
Yeah, I think with Westville, I wanted to provide a sense of age, like
Yeah.
history that had been there a while. Whereas this, like, you maybe want a little bit of age, because I mean, it wouldn't have taken a day to build this, but at the same time, it's also, different material. It's more weather resistant, more than likely. I do want to go around and maybe add some wear and tear. Like, it would be kind of cool to take some regular diorite and put like little strips or little patches where like maybe some weathering has happened on the exterior of the command center, or where I've got sandstone, uh, red sandstone, and orange terracotta. Maybe mix those up a little bit and make it look like it's a little bit more weathered as opposed to just like a clean seam. But that's more like last last minute stuff. And I don't know, like maybe I would prefer it to look clean and simple. And the thing is, like when you're dealing with something this size, if you think about texturing it, like it's not just texturing one part of it. You've got to think, okay, now I've got 4 gigantic wings of this thing. Like, do I
Yeah.
really want to texture all this stuff? I'd be more inclined to break those big shapes up, like on the roof where it's pretty flat, by adding like antenna or a sensor array or like little greebling bits and maybe a vent or something. I'd be more inclined to add those kind of details on top of the blank slate of material, as opposed to trying to add too much texturing, because it would get noisy quickly because of how big it is. You need to kind of like carefully focus people's eyes.
Yeah, and it makes sense with the design inspiration being a lot of the Imperial side of Star Wars, where it's a lot cleaner than
Mm-hmm.
like the Rebel side of Star Wars has a lot more of that grungy, lived-in feel. It's also a little
Yes.
bit more Star Trek as well, where everything's kind of a pristine set for the most part, even though the Enterprise gets beat up more than most ships.
Fair, yeah. Inside specifically is definitely cleaner, than Star Wars is. Even the Imperial stuff, I feel like the inside is a lot more like Star Trek Next Generation meets, Star Wars Imperial design. It's
Mm.
got clean lines, very simple stuff, but some of that just because like blocks in Minecraft are so big, like you can't really get into super fine detail for the kind of sci-fi that I want to do. So that's been a challenge, but also provided a nice clean design inside. But yeah, it's definitely the approach is just like a mix of some of my favorite sci-fi. When I was looking up images of No Man's Sky, I did start to get frustrated with like, oh, they've got so many light colors. Like we were talking on
Mm.
stream last week, it would be so cool if there was one more frog that made white frog lights that then we could dye any of the 16 colors in Minecraft, or at least the other ones that aren't purple, yellow, and green, because man, it would be fun to have colored lights in that way, just kind of like things that work, because like you can put colored glass on top of frog lights, but it takes like the pearlescent frog light, which is more purple, it really mutes it and becomes more of like a neutral grayish white. Whereas you can't just put any color stained glass on top of that to turn it into a red looking light. If you put red on top of a purple frog light, it just kind of looks like like red glass on top of a now brown light. Like it doesn't really work. Whereas if we had red lights, or if we had like I guess blue light would be nice. Cyan, pink. I know lots of people that would want a pink light. So like there's all kinds of fun. Like think about all the pink that's in Cyberpunk, right? Pink
Yeah.
and turquoise, right? That would be really cool to have those kind of lights. But just it's the things that you notice when you dive into a style of design in Minecraft, and you just realize how much of Minecraft is pushed towards the medieval fantasy stuff.
Yeah. Well, we can cross our fingers for the future drops that are coming in the rest of the year then, right?
Yeah, and speaking of, there was definitely some news coming out of Mojang this week. We can talk about the snapshot. This is Minecraft Java Edition snapshot for 26.2. It's snapshot 5. 26.2 snapshot 5 just exploded into the scene, according to Mojang. This snapshot introduces erupting geysers and new explosive archetypes for sulfur cubes. The new sulfur cube archetype is explosive. The potent sulfur can now form geysers. With a block inside, the sulfur cube is now immune to explosions. There is now a third and special archetype for sulfur cubes called explosive, similar to properties of a regular archetype with a slightly higher air drag, used when absorbing a TNT block. Absorbed TNT can be primed by redstone, fire sources, including dispensers with flint and steel, or nearby explosions. When primed by explosions, or absorbed TNT uses a randomized fuse timed between 0.75 and 3 seconds. Sulfur cubes with an absorbed primed TNT block cannot be picked up with a bucket, and sulfur cubes with an absorbed primed TNT block cannot be damaged. Absorbed primed TNT blocks cannot be sheared out of a sulfur cube, and on explosion, no small sulfur cubes are spawned. When potent sulfur is placed above a magma block and under 1 to 4 sources of water, it creates a geyser. The geyser will erupt at random intervals, shooting a plume of water particles upwards and applying an upward impulse to entities above it. Some changes in Snapshot 5 tweaked various mob hitbox, eye height, and rider positions. Hoglins are now considered hostile and not spawning in peaceful difficulty. Added sounds for geyser eruptions. Sulfur spikes now have unique sounds events as well. and removed touchscreen mode. There's a developer note here. Touchscreen mode has been poorly implemented and not properly supported for a long time. We plan to depreciate this feature in this release. To provide your feedback on this topic, head over to the feedback site, feedback.minecraft.net. We'll have a direct link in our show notes this week. Technical changes in Snapshot 5. Data pack version is now 104. The resource pack version is now 86.2. The data pack and resource pack changes are outlined in the changelog from this week's Snapshot. We'll have a link for that in our show notes for this episode. A few bugs of note in Snapshot 5. The height of chicken jockeys is slightly off. The riding position of baby hoglins is too low. The discount given by Fletchers for tipped arrows trades decreased the arrow cost instead of the emerald cost. Zombie villagers can become the wrong type of villager when they're cured. And deoxidizing waxed copper blocks now takes priority over scraping off the wax, which obviously we don't want. That bug and many others have been fixed. The full list of bugs can be found in our show notes at thespawnchunks.com with a link to the minecraft.net article.
I'm really happy they put TNT and sulfur cubes together. This is one of those things
cool,
that,
right?
As soon as they were announced, everyone was like, what does this do with TNT? And it turned out nothing for a while. But I'm really happy that they've started to focus on some of the little wish list features that have arisen from players knowing what's coming in the next drop and then thinking, what can we do with this? And so TNT sulfur cubes was something that has been on my radar for like thinking about, are they going to add this? Are they not? And really happy to see them in this week's changelog.
Yeah, I mean, like the only thing I can think of is putting TNT in a minecart as a way to move it around. Any other way primes the TNT. So unless you're going to carry it. And so now you can put TNT in a sulfur cube and it has all the properties of the sulfur cube. And unless you prime it on purpose or it gets too near a fire source by accident, then you can decide when to set it off. Now, you lose the sulfur cube, which makes sense. So unless you have a lot of the sulfur cubes lying around, you'd want to be careful with how many TNT, sulfur cubes you explode. But what is also neat about that is that they've changed other sulfur cubes that don't have a TNT in them to be immune to explosive damage, but they still get pushed around by the physics of it all. So now there's a very different way that you can move sulfur cubes around to add some chaos, hence the name of the drop, to your football match or your mini game or whatever it is that you're doing. Like if your soccer ball is going to explode at any certain point, like that changes things dramatically from a traditional sports match to something much more chaotic. So I'm curious to see what players are going to come up with for this.
Yeah, the different impact you can have on the physics of a sulfur cube with TNT in it as opposed to a regular block of prime TNT means this potentially changes the game for stuff like TNT-based flying machines even. Like you could carry a bunch of sulfur cubes and prime them as you go, and to eliminate the fact that you would need dispensers normally to dispense TNT, and then potentially you could even propel them downward faster than TNT could naturally fall, meaning the explosions can happen from a higher vantage point. I don't know if it's necessarily like a solve to TNT duplication in that way, because I still think that comes with something like movable dispensers, but I think it's a really interesting workaround, and I can imagine people getting excited about finding at least new and inventive ways of using this as an alternative to existing mechanics, if not a replacement for existing mechanics. But obviously it has all of the minigame potential as well, the kind of hot potato element of it. Also, even because TNT can be placed into sulfur cubes using dispensers, I'm curious whether that takes precedence over TNT simply exploding when it's dispensed by a dispenser, because that's the typical behavior of it. I'm curious if that's an opportunity to work that into minigames, and instead of the TNT immediately being primed when it's dispensed, if there's a sulfur cube in the way, it just swallows the TNT and then becomes something that you can shoot back at your opponents or something along those lines. There's a lot of potential there for new and interesting interactions besides just a fun way of blowing stuff up again. So I like the idea that just opens up even more minigame potential for the sulfur cube than it initially had.
Yeah, I'm thinking like explosive dodgeball. Like if there's a redstone line or a redstone trigger dividing one team from the other, and you're just throwing sulfur cubes back and forth using whatever method, and then at some point your team unlocks like a TNT block, or randomly a TNT block is given to your team then you can prime that as it goes across the midline, and then they have to deal with the fact that it's going to explode. Like at some point between 0.7 and 3 seconds, it will explode. Are you going to be next to it? Is it going to blow up something that you need as a team? Like there could be all kinds of really fun stuff.
The geysers are also huge, I think. They're a really, really great addition. I'm happy to see more multi-block like interactions, kind of similar to how sound events now happen. If you've got like pale oak leaves and pale moss in the same place, you get that kind of creaking sound effect. It's really cool to see them thinking about stuff like magma and potent sulfur, how they interact, and that being an optional feature rather than just changing the way potent sulfur interacts with water blocks above it. Like you can layer those effects now. And the geysers I've already seen for so many creative build uses, people using them as like, you know, the steam and mist that comes off of like a waterfall, like a train, like a steam train spout, like at the front. And like there's so many fun ways that can be interacted with. Like combine it with stuff like campfire smoke as well, and you've got all these different properties. It also, I believe, travels through certain types of blocks, so you can have copper grates over the top of a geyser and it will still like spout through those, meaning they're safe to walk on without getting the nausea effect from the potent sulfur, and it becomes, you know, an entity elevator of sorts, kind of similar to using wind charges or bubble columns or something like that, but also without some of the restrictions involved in those, like bubble columns needing something surrounding them at all times in order to look like they can integrate with the environment well. Like if you put a geyser in some place like the Windy City build that I'm working on, for example, that could be another short elevator to get you up to another platform instead of stepping on the wind charge and that propelling you to specific heights.
I guess the only challenge there is that it's a random interval. So like you might be waiting for the elevator for longer than you want. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool, but like not completely controlled by the player. I like that the height is controlled by the player. I believe that the number of water blocks between the potent sulfur and the surface indicates how high it will potentially go. And that's really fun. I like the dynamic motion that it gives, because campfires are great. I used them a lot in chimneys in West Hill when I was building that. You know, you hide them with some trapdoors or put them inside of something, and then you've got the smoke plume where you want it. It would be really cool in like an industrial setting or even a sci-fi setting to have these geysers come out at random intervals, so it starts and it stops, so it creates a point of interest. You can combine them, as you said, with campfires to have like a constant plume of smoke, but then like different areas of steam coming out. I love that they go through blocks. That's really cool. I imagine there's going to be a list of things that they can probably go through. Like if it goes through a copper grate, then I imagine leaves would also be something that would be on the list. Maybe glass panes, because they don't take up a full block. I'm not sure how that would work, but there'd be a couple of different things that would be kind of fun to mess around with there. I definitely want to try to implement them in the sci-fi area. Like I'm thinking like when I do a smelter, like when I do a super smelter in the area, that could be a cool building to have steam coming out of. And even inside, like even if there's nothing happening on the outside, but you want to have like a room that just looks like it's really mashing stuff together, having pistons going and steam pluming in the background. Like for your steampunk area, like I can imagine all kinds of really fun things would be happening. So like there's lots of opportunity here, and I like that it's a new texture as well. Like it's not just the campfire texture at a different interval or different density. Like it's a new texture. It looks completely different. It's a lot more opaque, which is cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to messing around with it.
Yeah, I think they took a really solid art direction with it, so I'm really excited for it, and I
Yeah.
think it's going to provide a lot of both mechanical interest for this drop and also build interest, which is one of the things that's most important to me, I think, about this drop system, is that they've got something for everyone in there, and we didn't see that as much with drops like Tiny Takeover. We're seeing it now with Chaos Cubed, and that just makes me really happy to talk about this drop as we move forward into like the feedback process on this stuff. I think some people already want there to be ways you can trigger geysers remotely. We'll see if that emerges or not, but even without that, I think it's a really fun feature and could add some fun minigame potential for like a shortcut that you could take, but only if the timing is right in like a race. It kind of gets you through to the next area faster or something. There's like a little bit of risk reward involved in mechanics like that I think this slots into in a really nice way.
I mean, a sticky piston with the magma cube on the end of it moving in and out of position would do it, right? If the
I
redstone
mean, I
line
don't know
is
if it
long enough.
activates it immediately. I think it's more just it has the potential to change
Right.
what the potent
Yeah.
sulfur does, right? Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's not exact timing, but it would be like you'd be able to turn it on and off,
Yeah.
which would be cool. But
It's a
yeah, that would
mechanic that
be
you can trigger that way, yeah.
yeah. And if it doesn't damage the player, then again, like if it's some sort of like what are those games called where it's like obstacle courses and people are just like running through this thing as fast as it's
Oh,
like a
like a
gauntlet.
wipeout kind of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
that kind of a course. You know, like so you have something like, a platforming or a parkour course with like geysers going off. Like just
Hmm.
I mean, like skill is gonna be one thing, but then like your timing, especially when they're random, like it's not like a Mario level where it's the same timing every time, the boo or the thwomp or whatever it is that's in your way is moving around. Like it would be completely random. It'd be tricky to try and time. But like fun if it's more of a if it's less competitive and more just like in the spirit of good times and silliness and stuff like that.
Yeah, we had an email a couple of weeks ago, I think now, about the potential for using the Sulfur Cube in MCC challenges, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the Sulfur Cube and these new geysers both made this a lot more
Oh yeah,
interesting with the addition of TNT as well. Like, I think I can see them, workshopping ideas for that already.
yeah. I could almost use it like a batting cage or like a ball launcher or something, where like you
Mm,
kind of have to wait for the sulfur cube to get launched and then punch it in the right direction. So like it will be launched at some point, and you just have to time it right. In the same way that you don't know when a pitcher is going to throw exactly in baseball, like it could be kind of fun to mess around with.
yeah, and then you've got options for weapons to attack it with: spears for extra reach, swords for extra damage, all kinds of stuff like that. Really fun. Looking forward to seeing how the drops progress, and not that long, honestly, before Chaos Cubed is going to be in full release. So we'll see how things
Yep.
shape up.
Well, speaking of feedback, the rest of the episode is going to be dedicated to email questions from listeners and podcast community members that we've collected over the last few weeks. A shout out and thank you to the Rainbow Email Sheep of Doom, who helped organize all of these emails into a spreadsheet that has them set by topics, and was able to go through and cull some stuff and select the ones that were best for the show. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone for sending in questions and emails. So there's some really good questions in here. We're going to go through as many as we can in the show. Apologize if your email didn't make the cut. It might have been something as simple as like somebody else emailed ahead of you and asked the same question, and so we didn't want to repeat them if we could. So that's the plan. Is to just kind of go through these as not as quickly as we can, but as succinctly as we can, because we wanted people to keep them short, and for the most part, people did keep the emails short, which was great. It means we can fit a lot in.
Yes. If you'd like to email the show for a regular episode where we normally discuss at least one or two emails about Minecraft that week, whatever your Minecraft thoughts are steering you in that direction, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. And as always, if you can keep your emails short and on point, it really does help us include them in the show more easily. Also, if you're a patron, let us know in the subject line, because we sometimes save an email for the post show as well.
First email is from Flav7. Hi, Joel and Johnny. My question relating to Joel's newfound hobby of pizza making. What is your ultimate pizza? The one you could eat endlessly if you never got full? Is it one you had from a place once that was the best ever, or one that you made at home, etc.?
I will kick us off by saying that as long as it's got pepperoni, I am typically happy. There's a place local to me that is more or less the only place we get pizza from now, though, because, if we want to order in, we want to order in from a good place. And it's a place we actually have to go and drive to because they don't do a ton of like delivery options in our area. But it does a pepperoni, andouja, and crispy onions, and that is probably my favorite. But I like variety, so I feel like pizza being one of those foods that's more like a genre rather than just a specific dish, I feel like the variety is one of the things that makes it great. So I like a little bit more variety than just one pizza all the time. How about you, Joel?
My go-to, if I'm ordering out, is the works. It's simple. It gets most of what I like. Around here, that is pepperoni, mushroom, green pepper, onion, salami, and bacon. So that's a good mix of things. If I really have to drill it down, pepperoni, mushroom, and green pepper would be my favorite. When I'm making it at home, I use red onion and I use red pepper. I just like those better, but I do like a green pepper on a pizza. When I order from places, like my favorite is Alexandra's. It's a local chain. I don't know that red pepper is really as an option. It's usually green when you're ordering from a pizzeria around here. So I like both. But at home, red pepper is normally what I have on hand, so that's what I put on, like red onion, red pepper, pepperoni, and then maybe a little bit of ground beef if I have the opportunity. But like, it's not a must. I definitely enjoy the basics and lots of cheese.
Next question comes in from HatboxBurk128. Says, "Hi Joel and Johnny, do you have any plans to connect in person anytime soon?"
Not at present, with flight costs and fuel costs skyrocketing. However, if at some point I ever vacation in Europe, I'm sure there would be an effort. Like when in Rome, if Rome is where I am, there would probably be a stop in London. I would have to connect at some point because I'm far enough away that there's no direct flights for places in Europe outside of London. So just to have a stopover, I think it would be silly to go that far and not at least meet in person. Because for folks that don't know, we haven't yet. You and I have been doing this podcast for 400 episodes remotely. And years ago when we were thinking about it, they were still doing in-person Minecraft lives, but now they don't.
Obviously, likewise, if I ever make the trip to Canada, I will make sure to let you know. But like most of my international trips are flying home to California to see my partner's family. So that tends to be where my travel budget goes. And obviously, California is the other side of North America from where you are in Canada. So even though massive continent, it's not even like on the same coast. So yeah, there's possibilities that it will happen in future, but regrettably, we don't have any plans for it right now.
I actually don't know. Someone might want to check the math on this, but I think I'm closer to London than I am to California.
It's
like
quite
LA.
possible, yeah. With how big the world is, yeah. There's a shorter distance across the Atlantic. It's certainly equidistant in terms of like time zones, because you're 4 hours away from me. I think you're also 4 hours away from California, so
yes.
It sort of works out that way too.
Next email is from Enemy Creator 950. If you could meet anyone, past or present, who would it be?
I think in my case, and this is recency bias talking, I would love to hang out with Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is the host of Dimension 20, the current host of Critical Role Campaign 4. I think he'd just be really fun to just pick his brain about a bunch of D&D stuff, but he also seems like a very nice man. So I think either him or the movie director Guillermo del Toro, because he's made some of my favorite movies, and I love his approach to practical effects. He's also got a really cool house just full of all sorts of weird like horror film knickknacks and memorabilia, so I think it'd be really interesting to go to his house specifically instead of just like hanging out at a pub somewhere.
For me, alive would be Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it covers all kinds of stuff, like just the bodybuilding stuff I mentioned in the pre-show, the politics and world interests, movies and stuff I grew up watching. Like there's just a whole lot that I think would be a very interesting conversation. And especially because I've seen him in interviews lately, and just the experience that someone has when they've done that much is just really, really cool. And then for someone that isn't around anymore, one of my creative heroes growing up was Jim Henson. I always thought that the kind of work that he did was really, really cool. And again, it would be like definitely an artist's artist. Jim was definitely that kind of a person. So that would be someone that I would have really loved an opportunity to talk to.
Yeah, Jim Henson's a great call. That's such a good one. Arazan asks, what's your favorite game aside from Minecraft and Hytale? Bold of you to sneak Hytale in there. I don't know if it's either of our favorite games. Why don't you just take this one first, Joel?
So it's funny. I don't have a favorite game necessarily, but I have logged a lot of hours in Satisfactory. I really enjoy Satisfactory. Next to Minecraft, that's probably the game that I've spent the most time in. But I would really like an MMO. Like I would really like something like that to sink my teeth into. I think that that's the kind of game that would really grab me and pull me, not necessarily away from Minecraft, but it would be like the thing that I would be jonesing to play even after playing Minecraft for 3 hours on stream. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go log into this new MMO and try that out. The other thing that I've logged a lot of hours in, surprising to me because I'm not a car guy, is Forza. I've played Forza Horizon 4 and 5, and 6 is coming out on the 19th of this month, and I'm really excited. So, like, that's my kind of relax on the couch, enjoy the very pretty graphics, and going super fast in cars that I will never have an opportunity to drive in real life. And it's just fun. It's just a really good arcadey, fun time playing Forza Horizon.
For me, it varies depending on what I played recently. It's so difficult to choose. Expedition 33 was huge for me. I think I'm done with it for now. But like one of my favorite RPGs in recent memory, I think I'll always come back to Elden Ring and Stardew Valley, which are obviously two opposite poles of the gaming landscape. But Stardew is one of those ones that obviously it has that gameplay loop that you can just get stuck into for hours. I consider it my holiday game because I can play it on my old, like, 10-year-old MacBook at this point. But Elden Ring is the one that I've put the most hours into in Steam because I was trying to play through that game with all of the weapons. Taking a bit of a break from that now that D&D is happening, but also, yeah, it's one of those games that has so much depth, really rewards a kind of deep reading of it, and like going into all of the lore of all of the weapons and all of the item descriptions and stuff. So there is depth to it if you want it.
Next email is from Katie Pester. Hi, Pix and Joel. Years ago, I started listening to the Fun City podcast after Pix shared a few episodes on Twitter. And now, after some time away, I'm catching up on what I missed after Float City. At the end of almost every episode, at the tail end of the credits, there's a unique little message that mentions Pixariffs in some creative way. For ages now, I've been wondering how Pix is connected with the folks at Fun City Ventures. Fun City is great, but I love the Spawn Chunks more. Katie Pester stared into the square sun overhead and felt strange sense of kinship.
Well, thank you, Katie. It's funny. It's occasionally people discover my name in those credits, and I have been asked it a couple of times. Basically, the short answer is I've supported them on Patreon from the beginning at like a relatively high tier. Mike Rugnetta is the sort of driving force behind Fun City. He's one of the game masters. They have two. They kind of split the GMing duties, but Mike is sort of the architect of most of the story, from what I understand. He hosted one of my favorite YouTube channels back in the day, which was PBS Idea Channel. And then I kind of kept track of what he was doing online until he ended up launching this TTRPG podcast around the time I was also getting into shows like The Adventure Zone and other D&D stuff. So I went all in supporting them to get their show off the ground. They have sent me merch over the years as well. So occasionally on the podcast, you might see me wearing a Fun City t-shirt every so often. But yeah, I've supported them for a while. They initially started playing Shadowrun, and then the Float City arc that Katie mentioned was in Stillfleet. It was the first time I'd ever heard of Stillfleet. That's now one of my favorite games. It's the one I play probably most often locally with a regular group of friends. So I feel like I owe a lot of my kind of social hobbies as well to listening to shows like that, and my way of supporting them is just to give back via Patreon. Caroline asks, Hi Pix and Joel, not sure if either of you are fans, but are you excited for the movie adaptation of Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn book, which Apple TV are developing? Are there any actors that you feel would be a particularly good fit for some of the characters? Caroline could not contain her excitement and anticipation for the Mistborn movie and exploded on the spot.
I have heard of it only through like TikTok clips and people talking about fantasy books, and like because of my interest in Lord of the Rings, I get kind of information and culture from all those kind of walks, but I have not read it, so I have gotten zero familiarity with the Mistborn series at all. But I hear it's good. I've heard lots of people, including friends of mine that I trust, speak very highly about it.
Yes, I have just been lent Mistborn by a friend, actually, but I've also
nice.
never read any of Brandon Sanderson's work, so I should probably get around to reading it before the series arrives on, like, the big screen. But yeah, excited for people to be excited about stuff like that. I know Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series did okay at Amazon, but has now been cancelled, and so people are looking for new fantasy adaptations, and Brandon Sanderson's work seems popular enough that it seems like a fairly straightforward choice.
Yeah, well, you would be one of those friends that I trust as far as, fantasy literature. So you'll have to let me know what you think about it.
I will let you know for sure.
Hello, Joel. This email is from David, and the question is for you. On a recent podcast, you mentioned Magic the Gathering whilst discussing potential card games for Minecraft. As someone who has played Magic for almost 7 years, I was excited to hear it referenced. I was wondering, what is your connection with Magic the Gathering? David, was completed. All will be one. If you know, you know. Well, I don't know, unfortunately, because my experience with Magic is just from friends who play and pop culture. Like I know what it is because back in the day I played Hearthstone from Blizzard, and when learning that game, people that were playing it that also played Magic kind of explained it in like Magic terms to me as like how to play. I was like, oh, okay, so like I kind of learned that way. I know they're vastly different, but Magic is much more complicated. But I don't play, but I have friends that play. And when I was learning to paint digitally, like I did a lot of classical illustration, pen and paper. A lot of my work was cartoony when I was doing digital work, but when I was trying to do more realistic painting, like concept art painting, a lot of the people that I would use as reference or even like take little online courses from were people that would paint the art that would go on the cards for Magic the Gathering. So I was familiar more with like the creature and the art for the game than I was when actually playing, because I've never played it.
Yeah, and if I can chip in on this one, even though the question wasn't addressed to me, I played a bit of Magic the Gathering back in that year I spent in California when I was 11, like 1998, 99. And I fell off of it once I was back in the UK. There weren't as many people to play with and not as reasonably accessible, like card shops and hobby shops like that. I'm around it a little bit more now because I go to a board game cafe to play tabletop games, but I'm typically not interacting with the Magic the Gathering stuff. I do sometimes play with my American brother-in-law when we go to visit because he was into that for a little bit and has one of those big boxes that you can just draft a deck from, and he would make a deck that would beat mine and then I'd try and make one that beat his and we just kind of counter each other for a little bit. But he's also into a lot of other board games, so we end up playing a variety of stuff that includes the whole family usually when we hang out now. Thor of Asgard writes in saying, "Hello, Pix and Joel. With the recent spike in popularity of sourdough bread, I came to wonder, have the two of you given sourdough bread a go? Thor of Asgard was fermented by a rampant sourdough slime."
Rampant sourdough slime. Nice.
Yeah, that's a sulfur cube these days, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's
red
can
color.
put bread in there. Yeah.
Red color. And if you don't take care of your sourdough starter, then it could look like a geyser. So like, hey, that tracks too.
Yeah.
I've actually been making my own sourdough bread since Christmas, my own pizza dough as well. I've been sharing this on the Render Distance, but if people are listening to the main podcast, they wouldn't know because it doesn't come up much at all on the actual podcast. But I tried making bread a year or two ago with like regular artisan bread with like yeast and stuff like that. And I had a lot of trouble with like the yeast not working or getting old or whatever. And so I thought, well, I'll try the sourdough stuff. I was talking to a friend about it, and he gifted me some of his starter as like a Christmas gift. Because I make a Christmas pudding, and Scott is on the list of people I give the Christmas pudding to. He's been baking bread, so he thought, oh, I finally have something I can give Joel back. So he brought me a loaf of his sourdough and some of his starter. And so I just said, you know what? I'm just going to learn how to do this winter. And I did. It didn't take long to catch on. For me anyway, and I've been making 1 or 2 loaves a week ever since, and I've never looked back. I have not bought a loaf of bread from a grocery store since the end of December, like since Christmas. So it's been super fun. I really, really enjoy it.
That's impressive that you haven't bought a loaf of bread for that long. Like, yeah. I am somebody who, I'm more of a dessert baker than a bread guy. So I'll make a sponge cake, I'll do bits and pieces like that, banana bread a lot of the time, but I have not jumped on the sourdough trend in as much as not baking it at home. I have benefited from the sourdough trend in that we have a couple of really good bakeries in our area, so I often end up buying a sourdough loaf from them. And it's honestly my preferred type of bread now. Like, occasionally when I go back to other types of bread, I'm like, yeah, this was good for a while, but I'm sort of in a sourdough zone, I guess. But yeah, like I've not really baked a whole lot of bread in my life. I've done it once or twice and it's come out okay, but I'm by no means an expert. So I defer to Joel's expertise in that case.
The hard part with sourdough is, of course, it's going to be different for everyone's kitchen. For me at sea level, at temperatures in Canada, like it's going to be very different. It's going to change for me this summer. Like my apartment gets stupid warm in the summertime. So my fermentation time I'm about to be very bad at making bread for a month or so before I can really get a handle on it. Again, because the temperatures are going to change. But for like compared to like someone in California, it's going to be different because the weather is not going to be as humid, or Southern California, I guess I should say. Drier temperatures, less humidity, like that kind of stuff is going to be different as well. And because the natural yeasts in the sourdough levain are from the environment you're in, sourdough starter from here is going to taste different than sourdough starter that you might do in England. Like it's going to taste different. Air is different. All kinds of things are different. So that's the fun part of it, but also the hard part about learning, because like people put like timing and instructions online, and sometimes they don't say like this is all relative to like so many other factors. Like you kind of have to get to know how this works in your house, in your kitchen. And so that took a little while for me to get a handle on. I'm still trying to figure out pizza dough. I can make the pizza dough tasty and the right texture, but shaping the pizza dough, it's a very different skill than shaping bread. Like shaping bread, you can kind of roll it around on the counter and just kind of like turn it into a ball or a batard or whatever. But throwing pizza dough and manipulating it and shaping it and stretching it, not a skill I have yet. So they take a long time for me to shape out, and they're very seldomly round. You'll see pictures on Instagram. You're seeing the roundest part of the pizza. It's usually more oval / it might have a square side to it. Like it's not. I definitely pick and choose the angle for the Instagram photography for my pizza for sure.
Nice.
The next email, I think, is also from Thor of Asgard. I scrolled and I think I missed it. Hello, Pix and Joel. As a recent enjoyer of the Gigs D&D series, I came to wonder, what are your experiences with Dungeons & Dragons? You, Pix, do an awesome job as a storyteller and dungeons master in the series. Thor of Asgard drowned in a stray orb of 10 gallons of water.
They'll get you. They'll surprise you. So I mentioned this, I think, a little bit earlier, but I picked up the Adventure Zone podcast maybe a little bit before 2020, I think end of 2019. And so I picked up D&D, the game itself. I picked up the rule books in February 2020, having got a bit more familiar with it and realizing that D&D wasn't just the sort of stuffy, rules lawyery game that other popular media had made it out to be. I'd seen sort of, I think there's a Big Bang Theory episode where they play it, and there's an IT Crowd episode where they play it, and a lot of that is sort of this sort of negative attention. It's kind of like, look at these nerds doing their nerd thing. I originally got the D&D source books even just to get a bunch of world building and like art inspiration for doing stuff in Minecraft, and thought, well, if I end up getting into the game, so much the better. But fortunately, my partner and a couple of our friends were interested in trying it out. They'd heard about it too, and decided that that'd be fun. That was right before, obviously, the COVID pandemic hit. So since then, we started playing a game remotely. And after that, more recently, when I've been able to go out and socialize with folks, I joined a local TTRPG society, and I've picked up a lot of other RPGs in the meantime. But I think that's all experience that can be brought back into D&D games. So I've been playing a lot of different stuff regularly that I think is all inspiring my own D&D journey too.
I've only played once as far as a proper campaign. We never finished it, but it was part of a group of coworkers I had when I had a part-time job several years ago. And I played a dragonborn barbarian. I was not a fast player, but if I caught you, I could turn you into pudding. And so that was the fun for me. Like it was a big smash it, ask questions later kind of RPG for me, which was great. And I did also try a one-off session of whatever the TTRPG was for Star Wars, somewhere in like the mid, like 2014, 2015, something around there. I was at a convention, a podcasting convention, and someone was running a single encounter. Like it started and ended. There was a beginning, middle, and end to the one tabletop session. It was a few hours. Really enjoyed that. That was fun because I know fantasy from like pop culture, but I'm not, and I wasn't at the time familiar with the D&D kind of world, but Star Wars I knew. So when someone was talking about battle droids and Ewoks and this person's a Wookiee and this person's a smuggler, like you can imagine what they all look like very easily. So the theater of the mind was very easy at that point. And so I really enjoyed that.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's a Star Wars hack of 5th edition that's just kind of Dungeons and Dragons sort of redressed as Star Wars, but I think there are also official Star Wars systems out there. There's also a bunch of tabletop games that have all of the minifigures and stuff so that you can reproduce space battles in them, so there's a lot of variety out there for the Star Wars fans as well. The next email comes in from a very familiar face if you're in our patron Discord. It's from Jumbo Sale, who's one of the content engineers as well as one of our moderators who helps keep the space safe. So thank you, Jumbo, both for that and for your email, which says, "Hi, Johnny and Joel. Both of you have mentioned getting inspiration from real-world architecture and scenery. Are there any places you'd love to visit to absorb ideas and boost your creativity? Congrats on episode 400. Here's to the next 100 and the big 500. Jumbo Sale wishes there is a Lytra or even just happy ghasts you could tame in real life."
I'm all for Elytra, but happy guests in real life? No thanks.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of time.
That's a blimp, I'm pretty sure. That's a Zeppelin.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried that. They exploded. I would put Rome, Italy in general, but Rome is really high on my list. And then Scotland for the castles. I've never been to Europe, and so Europe is on the bucket list. But Scotland and Ireland and Rome and Italy come up a lot when I'm thinking about where I would want to go. A lot of that has to do with my art background. So like Italy and Rome, there'd be just an awful lot from both an architecture and an art perspective for me to get up a trip to Rome and Italy.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to live in the country that has a lot of different visual history in terms of the variety of architecture. We've got castles nearby me, even that we can go and visit. So I feel like I'm spoiled in that sense. And I've been to bits of Europe, so I've traveled a little bit. I would honestly love to travel anywhere, but like language barriers make me the most anxious. So it's really difficult for me to consider
Yeah.
traveling to places that I would be, on my own, or I'm probably the target demographic for one of those kind of package tour type of things where you actually have a tour guide to take you around somewhere like Japan. I would love to go to somewhere East Asia purely because there's not just the architecture is different, but the landscape is different, the geology is different. And I feel like that, along with architecture, is sort of part and parcel of the stuff I try to change up and emulate in Minecraft these days, rather than just buildings. And so Japan is probably one of those things that's on my bucket list. Whenever I do travel these days, I do pay a lot more attention to architecture than I used to. So when I was traveling with family visiting the French Alps, or when we were in Barcelona and Madrid, most recently with my mother-in-law, like I spent a lot of time looking at buildings, taking pictures, and most of the time I'm a bit of an armchair traveler and happy to have a lot of great reference images to find of real-world architecture, but nothing really beats being there and experiencing it in person, getting to walk around and see the whole thing in 3D space. So it's something that, yeah, as I move forward in my years, I'm hoping to do a little bit more traveling and find those spots for architectural inspiration.
I can speak to the landscape stuff. And another question I think we got coming up later about travel, because I know what you mean about being in a different part of the world for sure. Our next email comes in from Dean. They were sneaky and they added a bunch of quickfire questions. So, what's your favorite color? Favorite ice cream? Favorite game? Show or movie? Favorite animal? And favorite Minecraft block/item? We've never had that question before. How are we ever going to answer this?
Well, I can answer pretty quickly and succinctly. Blue, blackcurrant sorbet, if I'm allowed sorbet rather than ice cream. My favorite game is definitely Minecraft, but secondarily, probably Elden Ring. My favorite show or movie, I think I narrowed it down to the movie Hot Fuzz, the Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost movie. My favorite animal is probably cats, although I have a lot of favorite animals. And my favorite Minecraft block is Emerald Ore. Over to you, Joel.
Favorite color would be red, even though I don't wear it very often. Utterly Divine is my favorite ice cream flavor. It is chocolate fudge and vanilla ice cream with peanut butter cups in it. Forza would be the game that I referenced earlier. Lord of the Rings for my favorite films. Dog, I'm a dog person. American Bully specifically is the kind of dog that I like. And at the moment, I would say Froglights in Minecraft are kind of like just exactly what I want.
Yeah, several of these change all the time for me, including favorite Minecraft block, even though Emerald Ore is like the mainstay. It's the one I come back to.
Yeah, I think we have that come up again later as well.
A couple of questions came in from Captain Graham 90. We'll take this one first. Hi, Johnny and Joel. Thoughts on pineapple on pizza and favorite pizza flavor? Captain Graham 90 devoured a delicious stuffed crust pineapple and pepperoni pizza.
So we addressed the favorite pizza earlier, but as far as pineapple on pizza, if it's a Hawaiian pizza and it's free, then yes, but I'm not ordering it. Like that's just not my go-to. But if it's a work event or something with that part-time job and there's like a pizza party and like there's a free piece of Hawaiian pizza, I will 100% take that if there's no other options. But what I find funny about all of that is that Hawaiian pizza is actually Canadian. It was invented in Canada.
Yes. I think pineapple goes with pork. Usually, if you serve gam and ham in the UK, you'll get pineapple with it. It's a really nice kind of sweet and acidic balance to the salty and savory pork. So if there's ham or pepperoni on a pizza, I'm fine with it. I wouldn't put pineapple on just any pizza. Like, it has to be chosen specifically, as you do with most ingredients, I feel like. And I've also heard it argued recently, I think it just like on an Instagram reel where a chef was debating it, and he said that pineapple goes best on pizzas which don't use a tomato sauce as a base, because that already provides the sort of sweet and fruity acidity that you want on the pizza. So if you have like a creme fraiche sort of base, or maybe like a garlic butter base, then the pineapple might go down better because it has more of a place within the palate of that dish. But yeah, that's the professional version. My version really is just that if it's got pork on it, I think the pineapple's going to go.
I'd be really curious what you would think of Donaire's and Donaire pizza, because it's got that combination of like sweet and savory on a pizza. It's definitely an acquired taste. It's not for everybody, but like around here, it's a staple.
Sure, I'll try anything once.
The other email from Captain Graham 90 is about Road trips. Have you guys got any stories from good road trips? Captain Graham 90 eagerly prepared for her road trip to the East Coast, PEI. Well, I can tell you right now that Prince Edward Island, PEI in Canada, is beautiful in the summertime. So if you're prepping to go, I hope the weather is lovely, because sometimes it can be a little bit rainy. It is an island, so there's that. But I used to vacation on PEI when I was a kid. That was like our go-to. We'd drive. I had family in Port Elgin, so we would stay in Port Elgin for a week or so and then like pop over to PEI for different trips and whatnot. The beaches are beautiful. Golf courses are really nice. There's lots of really cool stuff to do over there.
As far as favorite road trips, I haven't done that many. UK isn't all that much of a road trip country in the same way that North America is. But we went on a road trip more recently, August to September 2023. We drove down through France to the French Alps with my partner, their dad, and their brother. And we spent a bunch of time cycling down there. Incredible views, and it was my first time being in charge of a trip like that. Like, I was the responsible adult who was driving the entire way. We had 4 bikes on the roof, and, I was the one making all of the bookings and stuff. Obviously, we collaborated on that as a family, but it was super fun to be the one in the driving seat, both literally and metaphorically. We couldn't spend too long there because we had to get home again, and we only really had a week or so whilst they were over here, but it was really great. I'll post some photos and stuff if I remember to add these in a little bit later, but yeah, we spent a lot of time with gorgeous views, really lovely weather. It was the sort of like tail end of summer, so France is obviously gorgeous most of the time, but absolutely brilliant while we were there. I think the funniest story that came out of it was that we were at a gas station. We were just filling up with petrol, and there was a car in front of us. I think it was like a minivan style thing or like a camper van style thing that was another British motorist, clearly had like the British registration number plate, and they all got into their van having like got some snacks or whatever from like the little shop that was there, and I had to honk my horn at them because they had left the fuel nozzle in their gas like intake.
Oh wow.
And like they'd left it like, and I as far as I could tell, they had started the car and were about to drive away. So shout out to the safety features on that it didn't cause some kind of issue. But I was like frantically honking my horn as they were all getting in because it was clear that they hadn't noticed that. And
Wow.
like I was just gesturing wildly and almost got out of the car. And eventually they kind of turned around. But I was like, I have helped another British person not do something incredibly stupid on holiday. And I was thankful that, for whatever reason, there wasn't any kind of issue with that. But yeah, I assume once they'd finished filling up, there would have been some kind of automatic shut off. I'm sure there are a lot of safety features there. But for a second, I was like, are we all just about to explode? Is that going to happen to us while we're on holiday right here? So fortunately, it doesn't happen like it does in the movies.
Yeah, no, that's less dramatic is good. My favorite road trip, and it's my most recent vacation, which I can't believe it was 9 years ago now. But when I was at a podcasting convention in Salt Lake City, I took some extra time to drive through and hike in South Utah, which is the Midwest desert in the U.S. And just life-changing, completely alien landscape compared to the lush green ocean views that I have here in Nova Scotia, compared to like literally Wile E. Coyote type landscapes. Like there was just a whole lot of nothing. And in the same way that you can be at the beach, look out to sea and see on a clear day hundreds of miles nothing, I was experiencing that, but over land, like over desert, like just flat brown nothing. You could see mountains in the distance that were 100 miles away. Some of the national parks were amazing. Arches, Zion was fantastic. Bryce Canyon was really, really cool. I didn't get to spend much time there, but like it was a life-changing experience to just drive. And I did it all myself. It was just me. The podcast convention, I had friends, but it was just me in a rental car, seeing what I wanted to see, driving where I wanted to go, eating where I wanted to eat. It was really, really cool.
Caleb has written in with a very controversial one. Joel, and hopefully me as well, what are your thoughts on episodes 7 through 9 of Star Wars?
The short version is that episode 7 is fine. Episode 8 is awful, in my opinion. And episode 9 did okay to clean up the mess that was left by 8. But as a series, they're pretty unimagined. Like, you can't really objectively look at them and say, like, yeah, that's really unique and cool. They kind of redid a lot of the same stuff from the original trilogy. Really heavy on the nostalgia strings. there are some cool characters. There's some great acting. I really enjoy Daisy Ridley. So I don't want to throw everything about the sequels under the bus, but they're not my favorite. I would argue that the Mandalorian series is a better Star Wars feeling show than episodes 7 through 9.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm sort of the opposite. I sort of we mirror each other in that I thought The Force Awakens was fine. It had promise. I thought The Last Jedi was the only Star Wars movie at the time that felt like it had any depth or anything to say about like the Star Wars movies in general. It was sort of the self-analytical Star Wars, which I recognize some people really didn't like, invading the tone of what Star Wars had been up until now. And then The Rise of Skywalker was awful. That was my least favorite out of all of them. But I agree. I think it sort of lacks the sense of unifying vision that presumably George Lucas had when he was at the helm. Regardless of what you think of the prequel trilogy, it felt like part of the same story. And this really felt like, because it was happening afterwards, it just felt like an offshoot, really, rather than anything else. I think the thing I've liked the most out of the Star Wars canon recently has just been Andor, and I still haven't seen season 2 of that, but I hear very good things. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with what I want out of Star Wars now, is the kind of stuff that Andor was delivering.
Yeah. Something else that's really important to note too is like episodes 1 through 6 are about Anakin. It's about Anakin and Vader. Like that's the story. Whereas they try to make it about Luke, and then they try to make it about the Emperor in 7, 8, and 9, and that doesn't really have the same throughput. But in series like Ahsoka, which kind of came about from a Mandalorian cameo, you get more Anakin because she was Anakin's Padawan in the Clone Wars. So it's a deeper, broader scope, but it feels better to explore more Anakin than it does to explore more Emperor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that for sure.
Next email is from Daniel. Hi, Johnny and Joel, but this is mainly for Johnny. I'm going to be a DM for the first time in a couple of weeks, and I was wondering if you have any advice. Thanks in advance. Daniel accidentally had a TPK because he's a DM noob.
I'll briefly explain the acronyms for anyone who's unfamiliar. DM is Dungeon Master, somebody who runs a game of Dungeons & Dragons, and TPK is a total party kill when you wipe out all of the players. My number one piece of advice is listen to the players, especially if you plan on DMing a longer campaign, because offhand remarks and jokes that they make at the table can be turned into plot points, NPCs, and encounters further down the line. And that's the stuff that feels like a magic trick. If it's something that you mentioned once that your DM is suddenly able to make like a living, breathing part of the world, that's the stuff that really hooks people after the character creation process, where they're more concerned with what they're doing. It gives the characters something like the feeling of having an impact on the world, but it's coming from the player's perspective as well. Like, player ideas should really be part of it. And remember that you're telling a story together. They're not just there to hear a story that you're telling. So making the players a key part of that is really my number one piece of advice for people who are stepping into D&D and tabletop role-playing in general for the first time.
Yeah, my DM, John at the time, was really welcoming. So like I knew nothing. Like I needed to know rules. I needed to do a character sheet. Like I needed to do all that. And I found that having him be really welcoming was really helpful, because then I didn't feel like a fish out of water. I didn't feel like I was going to torque the party and have a bad time. And, and I'm an RP light kind of person. So, and I think that was also the environment. Like people were not taking it so seriously. Like no one was doing funny voices and stuff like that. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just like, if other people were doing it, they also wanted to make it clear that you don't feel that you have to if it's not your thing. So I thought that was a cool way to approach it as well. It made it more accessible for people like me that were like really brand new to it.
Yeah, doing a session 0, setting down some ground rules, like, going over people's characters and setting the tone of everything, I think is really important up front, making sure that people know that they aren't expected to like role play and act their way through this. Like people can break character if it serves the purpose at the table of like clarifying what's going on, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, it's part and parcel of just making sure that everybody has a good time at the table, because that's really what you're there to do. You're playing a game together, and some people think the stakes seem to be a little higher than that. I'm like, no, this is just, everyone is here to have fun first and foremost. SWS Scooby-Doo says, "Hi, Johnny and Joel. I've been a fan of the show for about 6 years now. I really appreciate the opportunity to listen to other adults geek out about my favorite video game of all time. The only other people who really appreciate my love of Minecraft are students. Which brings me to my question. As a passionate educator who has only ever taught and learned in the US, I'm deeply curious about your experiences of Canadian and British schools. What would both of you say school did really well for you, and what do you think could have been done better? SWE Scooby-Doo died of excitement waiting for episode 400.
I would say for me, because I ended up as a professional artist, access to creative classes from middle school on up, art shop, so like metal, woodworking, drafting, cooking, that was really, really good for me because it was a credit. Like I had a full class in art all through high school. I wasn't a fan of the study for / regurgitate information on a test, like midterms and finals. I did fine because like I knew how to do it, but I didn't feel like I learned as much as I could have because you're studying for that one event, and then once I'm done, like I don't need to remember any of that stuff. So it felt kind of strange. I much preferred project-based stuff. So if we had a bulk of our grade that was based on like a science project or a term paper or something like that, I would much prefer to work on something that I could perfect over the course of the semester and hand it in that way. And that's how my university career went. I have a Bachelor of Fine Art from Mount Allison University, and most of my studio classes, in a way, it was a lot of pressure, but it, like having 75 or 80% of your grade for that class be your final portfolio for that class at the end of the term was way better for me than studying for art history midterms, art history finals, which they still did the same way. But the studio classes, I much prefer that kind of project-based learning.
For me, I, for my part, like the British school system quite a lot. Like, it starts off more general and encourages you to specialize. So when I hear about American university education, people are always expected to take a couple of classes that are completely unrelated to their core discipline just to make up their sort of overall credits in course terminology, whatever it is. And I like the fact that in UK schools, you start off with like GCSEs, you can do like up to sort of 13 or maybe even 15 different like specialized subjects, but then you choose like a handful of those to go into college with, and then usually one thing that you're going to university for. And at university, you just study stuff related to that unless you are doing some sort of more general university education, which is more uncommon, I think. I kind of became a bit disillusioned with things at university, though, because I was training in music production, which is a very competitive field, and a lot of the lecturers kind of took the approach of being negative about our chances of making it, the kind of Jerry Seinfeld approach to, like, somebody comes up to you and says they want to be a comedian, just say, oh, it'll never work for you, do something else instead. Like, those guys at my place of higher education. It was technically Leeds College of Music, so it wasn't like it was, accredited by the Open University. But I still got a good education from them, but they were trying too hard to make sure we took it seriously in that sense by basically telling us more negative stuff about it, like, a lot of you aren't going to get jobs in this field, which is maybe the practical reality of the situation, but it doesn't feel especially encouraging to hear from somebody who's supposed to be teaching you the discipline. So it wasn't the most encouraging environment, but funnily enough, I still use skills that I learned there every day, just in using the equipment that I use to record and edit videos. Like, a lot of those skills were things I learned editing music on a timeline-based digital audio workstation and, setting levels and gain and everything on a audio mixer. Like, I still have some of the equipment that I used all throughout my university days, the headphones, the speakers, stuff like that, that's still knocking around and still in very good shape. So I'm fortunate in that I learned a lot of good skills there, but I feel like people could have been more encouraging and less pessimistic, I guess, about all of the students' prospects when they were lecturing.
Next email comes in from Blast Jordan. Hey, Joel and Pix. Here's my question for the 400th episode. Are there any professional or personal skills that you have only discovered you are capable of doing during the making of the Spawn Chunks podcast? Cheers, best regards, Blast Jordan, who is a landscape member of our Patreon.
I think a lot of what we've done with the podcast is expanding on and developing skills I already had, like the aforementioned audio and video production stuff. Obviously, video a lot more since episode 300. I haven't really done like a two talking heads kind of format of video editing before, so that's really fun. Live presentation, I feel like, is something I've developed a little bit more also since we've been covering the Minecraft live presentations on stream. And sort of co-casting stuff like that is something I learned a little bit through doing work with Twitch Rivals, but then also doing live broadcasts of Minecraft Live. I think the one thing I've really learned from the Spawn Chunks podcast is I've never really interviewed anybody before this show, and our interview episodes are ones that I have a really great time on, and it's nice to come into like a show notes document and have like a structured interview in mind instead of just sitting down with somebody in a more casual setting and picking their brains. So I think that's probably a skill that I've developed, is just learning how to talk to people about what they're passionate about and draw out the answers that might be more surprising to people who want an interesting interview.
Yeah, that's a good one. And we've had some good feedback from people we have had on the show, especially more than once, where they felt really comfortable. It felt like an interview, but it didn't feel like they were on the spot. It was just more casual, which is cool. Still formal, but like getting the answers they want without feeling like they're being just like constantly drilled. For me, it's being comfortable switching to be on camera 6 days a week, because for people that don't know, that if you haven't been around for more than the last 100 episodes, which is wild to think about, we only started doing video in episode 300. And I, to that point, had not done any video for streaming either. But after starting the podcast in video, because we felt that it was about time and podcast trends was to have more video content, we wanted to push the YouTube side of things more. Plus Minecraft being a visual game, it made sense to have a visual podcast. Like I was a streamer with no face cam. Like I enjoyed the comfort of not having to worry about that kind of stuff. And after doing the video podcast, I was like, well, now I have no excuse. Like I really have to, have this camera on all the time. I'm used to it now, but it did take a while for me to kind of get used to it. And I've been podcasting for a while. So streaming and doing like live coverage and interviewing people, that stuff I had all done before, but in audio. And so the video component, and for a while there, I think I, for whatever reason, would be way more self-conscious when I would screw up recording a podcast or on stream when it was on video, which is funny because like with the podcast, we have all the same editing capabilities. Like we can edit out flubs. We do, we edit out mistakes when sirens or noise happens in the background. We can still edit that kind of stuff out. But for whatever reason on camera, I felt more self-conscious about it. So getting over that was definitely something that I had to get used to.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you're recording your own stuff for the first time, some people don't like the sound of their own voice. Some people don't like the way they appear on camera. Like a lot of those are hurdles that you have to overcome. And that is as much of the business of podcasting as it is, as anything else, as the editing, as the production side of things, for sure. Moving on to the Lego category, which just has the one question, but it's obviously a very focused category. This comes in from Noah saying, "Hey, Pix and Joel, I love Legos. I have a whole room called the Lego Room. I probably have over 2 million of them. Would love to hear your connections with the life-changing bricks. My current project is making micro 16 by 16 Minecraft chunks from scratch."
So that's really cool. That's not a Lego adventure that I have taken up, which is like the my own creation stuff. I see ridiculously cool things like mechs and all kinds of designs on Facebook and social media and Instagram. And I've just never had the pieces, or if I do have pieces, they are assembled into things that I don't want to deconstruct. So I've never tried the whole mock thing. So tip of the hat to you, because that's a really hard thing to wrap your head around. I'm an 80s kid. I grew up playing with Lego. And for me, the ones I remember the most are the space sets and the pirate sets. I had a castle as well, but the pirate sets were really big and brand new. So I had at least a couple of pirate ships. They had little cannons that fired, which was cool. And the space sets, around the time that I was getting into them, they started to include battery packs in them. And they were awkward and heavy, but you could cover them up with enough Lego, and then they would like have little lights that would turn on, and there'd be little sounds that the spaceships would make. And so those are all kind of like, I would say late 80s Lego sets, because I would have been 10 in 89. And so anywhere's under 12 is when I was really big into Lego.
Yeah, I probably got some of the same sets even, but I would have got them like secondhand from like a jumble sale or something like that. And I definitely remember the pirate and the space ones. I grew up building with them, and I would make little short films with them when my family had a camcorder. And so I guess you could consider that in a weird way the genesis of my current career. More recently, I've had the opportunity to work with the Lego Group through a third-party PR agency that was running basically like a little online competition between Minecraft creators, turning a iconic Minecraft build from one of their worlds and videos into a recreation of it using Minecraft Lego sets. And so I recreated my ski lodge and mountain build from Survival Guide Season 1. I never had the heart to dismantle those, so they are still in my office. They're actually on top of a set of shelves that I have just over there. And so, yeah, they kind of now count to me as Minecraft memorabilia in amongst all of the, like, you know, creeper nightlights and mugs and stuff that I have from other Minecraft things.
I don't actually have any Minecraft Lego, but for anybody that's been paying attention to the video version of the podcast, I have lots of Lego around because I do a Lego Let's Chat on Fridays whenever I can to build sets. The most recent was a birthday gift from Cosmic, and that is the Sauron helmet that's over my shoulder here. But there's a TIE fighter, or a TIE interceptor, excuse me, on the computer behind me. And all over my studio, I've got Lego everywhere. And I got back into it just around the time of the pandemic. And I keep myself from buying too much because like I could be very interested in all kinds of stuff. But the ones that I spend the most time collecting, I guess you could say, or indulging in are Star Wars sets that pique my interest. I really like the UCS, like the big ships, but they can be pretty pricey. So I only get them every once in a while. I also really like the icons and the creator sets. So I've got like Transformers, I've got Prime and Soundwave, and I've got the helmet sets from Star Wars. Like I did before the Sauron helmet, I did the Vader helmet. I've got this starship or this spaceship Discovery, the space shuttle Discovery, and other things like Polaroid cameras and old timey radios, and just really cool objects. I think are really fun. The only video game related one I have is the Piranha Plant from Mario, which is a fun build too. But most of the time, I'm sticking to things that I want to display either in my studio, which makes sense for the streaming and content that I do, or like cool stuff in my living room. But like I'm quickly running out of shelf space. Like I need to figure out what to do with it and maybe pick and choose a couple of things that need to be broken down and put back into the box. Cause like I don't have the space anymore. But it's such a fun hobby. Like it's changed so much from when we were kids, and the Lego stuff that you can put together now, really complicated, really fun, really interesting things. I think the most recent one that was interesting for me was the Game Boy, which I think I also have. Yeah, it's right over there. So like the Game Boy, it's almost exactly the same size as a Game Boy from the 80s and 90s. Like it's really, really cool stuff that they were able to do.
It's funny how the imaginative side of Lego lends itself more to the digital versions like Minecraft, the sort of block building games, but then the practical side of Lego often leads you into an interest in engineering and stuff like that. So I think it's still a really great hobby to have for people of all ages because you learn something, especially from the more technical and complex Lego sets that you might not have realized you were going to learn.
Yeah, Technic is the Lego that I just like. I won't let myself buy because I will just like it too much, and that will be it. I will just be down that rabbit hole for a long time, and then I don't know where to put any of that either. But there's some really cool stuff over there. Minecraft and Lego. That's how I got into it. Like I was complaining to Steven, my co-host on the Citadel Cafe, about how expensive Lego was, and he said, "Well, you should try Minecraft. It's like digital Lego." And like here I am, 10 years later. Next email comes in from Camo Dude. We're going to be talking about content creation. How did both of you start doing YouTube, and did it start out as just a hobby, or did you have any long-term plans for it?
In my case, I started actually with a Vlogbrothers inspired channel, which no longer exists. But my partner and I did like a little YouTube, almost like video diary back and forth between each other in the same way that John and Hank Green started their channel back in 2017, I want to say. We did ours, not 2017, 2007. God, I'm mixing up my decades. But yeah, we started doing ours like 2009, like before we really met in person, and then slightly after we met in person as well. But yeah, those videos are all now lost to time. I next tried a songwriting project called Wiki Riffs, which I've also made private now, just because, you know, it's a lot of me just experimenting with different musical genres. I'm not super happy. It was never very polished or whatever, so it's not the kind of stuff that I necessarily want now that I'm more known on the internet, being out there. But that was just a songwriting project where I'd go to Wikipedia, hit random article, and then write a song about whatever came up, and I'd try and do that every week. And that lasted up until I was employed, and then ended up, having less and less time for it. Pixel Riffs started when my brother-in-law Rob, my sister's husband, built me a PC so that I could play Minecraft and make Minecraft videos with him, instead of having just played on Xbox up until that point. And the rest is history, really. How about you, Joel?
That's really, really cool. I have less of a YouTube background and more of a streaming background. So I used to stream live art when I was working on comics and my own illustrations on Justin TV before it was Twitch. So
Wow.
that's kind of how, it was a long time ago. Like with a webcam pointed at my drawing table, and it certainly wasn't 1080p. So
yeah, I was going to say like 480p webcam kind of territory. Yeah,
maybe 720, but yeah, it was definitely
if they had the
bandwidth
bandwidth for 720 at that point as well. Like,
yeah,
a lot of the early YouTube stuff, especially, is like really low quality, just because there wasn't the bandwidth and the storage space for it in those days.
Yeah, exactly. So I do have a YouTube channel. I've got two. I've got Joel Duggan VODs, which is where most of my content is now. But then Joel Duggan on YouTube is a channel where I started doing early edited videos, in the sense that you, like most people are familiar with like a Let's Play video from like, yourself, Johnny, or from Hermitcraft. Like I try to do that kind of stuff early on with Minecraft because that's what I was consuming. So I thought I would try to emulate that, but I couldn't justify the amount of time to play and edit completely on my own, like, without any real feedback or income, and then put it on YouTube and just kind of hope that it was going to catch on. Whereas with Twitch, you can generate income and generate a community immediately there. And I was used to that kind of content because I could just talk and draw and all that kind of stuff from before. So doing that with Minecraft was a lot easier. I did try some streams that I would then edit down, and those videos are available on my YouTube page. I think I got up to like episode 80 or 83 before I decided, like, I'm just going to stream. I'm just going to put the VODs on a different channel. I should have just continued to put them on the regular channel, but everybody has a separate VODs channel. So again, I just kind of followed suit. And then my VODs channel is actually the one that's monetized. My regular channel is not. So it makes sense for me to have the VODs on YouTube, and I just use it as an archive. So I don't really approach it with much more than that sense. Twitch would be the way that I, kind of approach it. So in terms of long-term plans, like I want to continue to do what I'm doing. I'm really enjoying work right now. The community is great, and there's a great overlap between my community and the Spawn Chunks community. And so I just like to kind of keep on going. So that's the plan. And the nice thing about it is that Minecraft is a very imaginative game. And with my art background, like I can usually think of stuff to do. So it's ongoing is not a problem.
The next email comes in from Caden, who says, I'm a long-time listener and have grown up with the podcast. As I'm starting a full-time job now, I was wondering how you balance work and gaming before it was your job.
Caden's also a landscape artist on Patreon. I've almost always been self-employed. So right from, with the exception of like working in some television studios for animation, I've always just been self-directed. So like it's kind of easy to balance gaming with your work when like you're your own boss. Now, I still had deadlines. Like I had illustration deadlines, I had personal deadlines I had to make. So like I couldn't play video games until I was done with the work. So I would just do that. Now, I wasn't a big gamer per se. I enjoyed a select few video games, but I wasn't like playing games all the time. What I was doing all the time was drawing. Like I would draw in my spare time. And even when I wasn't working for clients, I had personal projects that I was working on. So it really wasn't until maybe World of Warcraft, where I started to have like a lot more time dedicated to gaming, and then I just scheduled it because that was also multiplayer, and you'd have to do dungeons with friends, and so like everybody has to be available on like a Friday night or a Thursday night or something. So that became a little bit easier in that way. I actually find it harder to spend time playing games now because the adult in me says I've already spent 3 hours playing Minecraft today, even though that's my job, which is amazing. When I sit down at the Xbox, I think, well, I should probably watch something more like instructive or educational, or I should read a book or something. Like playing more video games in the evening feels like a real luxury when I've already done it during the day. So I don't tend to play as much as I used to. But it was only when like I started making content that I started to fold like that balance into what I did. So like if I wanted to play more Minecraft, I thought I have to turn this into something that I can work with either as a side hustle or as a job in order to keep playing Minecraft, because I was just spending too much time on it. So maybe look at that. Like if you're looking at, trying to find time for your games when you've got a full-time job, if you want to justify it, like treat it a little bit more professionally and maybe do a stream or hang out with friends or make it part of your socializing and do it that way. It might be a good way to schedule it.
For me, gaming has always been something I did to relax when I got home from school or work. And that obviously had to be balanced with other things as I've gotten older. But I think turning it into a YouTube project helped me stay connected to the creative side of that, to my creative passions. And before, I would spend a lot of time either songwriting or doing some like fiction writing. And now I see YouTube and this overall project as a way of like taking those skills and turning them into some other kind of output. And I think the thing to remember also is that while gaming is, like, broadly speaking, what our job is, there's only a small portion really of the job that is the actual playing of a video game and recording it, because then it's got to be edited. There's descriptions and thumbnails have to be made for YouTube uploads. In the case of the podcast, we're not gaming when we're playing, like we're not playing the game when we're talking about Minecraft. It's like the intellectual work and like all of the notes and discussion that has to go into this is all part of the job, but we're not playing Minecraft at the time. So if you're just using games as a way to relax, then that's just a hobby that you can have. And obviously that's got to move around some of your other hobbies if you have them. If you want to spend more time gaming, it might mean you have to do less of the other stuff you would do in your leisure time, whether that's like reading or other activities, sports, whatever it happens to be. But that all has to be in balance. And obviously the things that are going to make you money and help support you through life are going to take precedence. But there is still room for relaxation, leisure time in most of our lives, thankfully. So that's where the gaming really comes to the forefront.
Next email comes in from Barnaby Gaming. Hey, Johnny and Joel. If you were to only make videos on one video game other than Minecraft or Satisfactory, what game would it be? Barnaby Gaming was slain by the imposter Enderman, but it didn't show up in his chat until his death went unavenged. That's not that. Unaverage death.
Yes. there are only average deaths in Minecraft. For me, I think this would have to be a similar sandbox game, like Enshrouded or something like that. Like, if it was going to replace Minecraft, it would have to be something with enough depth to enjoy it forever. If there was only one video game that I could stream or make videos from. And Enshrouded is currently in development. It's a pretty deep game as it is, has a massive open world, and has a lot of similar building mechanics, although I tend to get a bit frustrated with how you unlock all of the building blocks, but I imagine once you're familiar with that game, you could still have a lot of fun with it. The other one, I guess, because I mentioned it before, Stardew Valley probably qualifies, but in the same way, I find myself losing interest after year 3, and it doesn't have quite the same approach to randomness that Minecraft does. The randomness is more in where you find the items and artifacts for the museum and what crops are going to be targeted by crows if you don't have scarecrows and that kind of stuff. But it's not like there's the infinite variety of worlds that Minecraft has. So it'd have to be something with enough of a sandboxy appeal or deep enough mechanics that I could theoretically enjoy it forever.
Yeah, my brain went the same way. It would have to be some sort of expansive world or a forever game or something that would allow me to continue and not have to like worry how long it would be before I would have to shift gears again to play and create content on it. So something like that if it was a successful one, which is hard to kind of predict, but something like an MMO, if new MMO had enough legs and enough interest for me, I could see myself getting in at the ground floor. And if it took off, being like, yeah, I could stream this on a regular basis and make it, something that would replace Minecraft if we were forced to shift for whatever reason. But it would definitely need to be something that I could play at my own pace. So games that have like an optimum way of playing, like I don't want to just be the same as everybody else. Like I like kind of doing things my own way, and that's why I like MMOs, because there's different classes and then there's different subclasses, and how you go through the zones can differ. How you experience things can differ. If there's a deep enough story and lore and quests, then like you could maybe not be doing the same things as somebody else, but still kind of generally marching towards the same world events. Like that kind of stuff I find really appealing. So yeah, it would have to be something of that nature, I think, for me to really enjoy it.
Yeah, anything that allows you to put your own personalized stamp on the content is really what's
Yeah.
going to be like a forever game for people.
Mhm.
Thor of Asgard is back with another question. I've always been wondering how careers like being a streamer and YouTuber will evolve. What are your long-term career plans or expectations? Are my hopes of another 400 or 800 episodes of The Spawn Chunks a possibility? Or do you dream of making Minecraft-related content until you're 80 years old? Thor of Asgard almost died at the realization that the podcast might end someday.
It's been my experience, because I've been a lifetime entrepreneur, and I find that working in media tends to drastically change every 10 years or so. And that doesn't necessarily mean that things go away, but the way that you approach things tends to differ. A good example would be switching this podcast to include video. Like that wasn't on my bingo card when we started almost 8 years ago, but like it was a shift that I felt we had to make, and it meant some adjustments. But I think we're better for it. So I don't know what Mojang and Minecraft is going to be for the next, couple hundred episodes. But I think, I don't want to speak for you, Pix, but like I'm quite happy doing this and doing this weekly. There's enough information, there's enough news, there's enough growth happening, and there's enough interest happening in the game that I feel like we're speaking to an audience that wants to talk about Minecraft. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I mean, never say never, right? Like things don't last forever. I used to listen to a podcast all about World of Warcraft, and that lasted a really long time. But like I don't listen to it anymore because I don't play the game anymore. But I know that there are still podcasts about World of Warcraft, right? So like it just depends on what your personal interests are and how professional things change. But I would really like to see this continue. As far as like making Minecraft content when I'm 80 years old, like I can't predict that. But I don't have a traditional view of retiring in the same way that I think other people might. I would go crazy if I had nothing to do. So I see myself, even as an artist, like when, moving down into more media creation, like I like making stuff. One of my favorite things about the Spawn Chunks is the fact that we can sit down on a Monday and there's nothing. And then there's show notes, a podcast, a published show, and we've made something by the end of the day. Brand new, out there, finished and ready for consumption. That's really, really cool. And it feels good as a creator to do that. So when it comes to that kind of thing, I don't see myself stopping that anytime soon unless I'm physically unable to. So will I still be streaming video games at 65 or 75? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's going to be VR. Like we were talking before the show about like how technology is changing. Like who knows what it's going to be like, but I can definitely see myself involved in some sort of creation from here on out. So what that means, like who knows?
Yeah, there isn't really a template for careers like in this field lasting that long, because like the careers in this field didn't really exist beforehand. It's like the equivalent of like, working in other broadcast media or TV and film, any of that kind of thing, where like, yeah, the discipline has been around for a while, but it's been through this state of constant evolution and change.
Mm-hmm.
And like, people who work in film often work in that industry their entire lives. I feel like this doesn't really feel all that different, even though the content is online and is subject to all of these different trends and everything. Personally, I would be happy making Minecraft content forever. It's a game that has always, delivered new stuff. There's apparently a roadmap for Minecraft updating indefinitely, and becoming like 100-year game. So there's always going to be a market for it unless anything drastically changes about the player base or the way the game works. I tend to dip my toes into other things like D&D as a way to stay flexible and not put all my eggs in one basket, but that's also just working on whatever inspires me creatively at the time, and like working in a creative field like we do now, I'm in a very happy place, so I don't really need to consider my options outside of this unless something about the landscape of what we do changes dramatically, which could happen, but then it really depends whether you want to roll with that or, become the standout, the staunch opposition to whatever the new trends are. And in some cases, I think there are enough people in the world that there's going to be an audience for both of those things, especially when you're working as something as widely beloved as Minecraft.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget when people ask questions like that Minecraft is like the most popular video game on the planet. So like it's like the fact, like thinking about it as a niche game is kind of silly because it's really not. I can't even imagine a time when it's like retro, because it already is a little retro in its vision in terms of like what it looks like, right? So I don't know. Next email comes in from Rai Jiu-Jitsu. I'm very new to this podcast. I started literally this Monday. Well, welcome in. So I'm not very sure what you guys like to do for the Q&A, but I've got a shot. What do you think about Minecraft YouTube content evolving in more of a scripted direction instead of a normal hardcore or SMP level of content? Thanks, Rai Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know that Minecraft content is going in a scripted trend so much as maybe the Minecraft content creators that you're watching might be going in a more scripted trend. And I would say that broadly Minecraft content creation tends to go where the viewers are going, at least for the people that watch those creators. So, I mean, Pix will be able to speak more to this because he does more YouTube content than I do. But I don't know that the Minecraft content online is shifting in any great big waves, because I still see all kinds of different stuff, from modded to first time players to people doing technical instructions to people doing traditional let's plays to people doing server stuff to people telling stories and doing very scripted things. Like, it all depends on the kind of creators that you follow. So I'd say it's a little bit more diverse than that. And as far as content that I consume and I make, I tend to make the kind of stuff that I want to consume. So I like chill, traditional let's play content or similar streams. And so when I make streams, it's basically like, I'm not really doing anything rehearsed or contrived. I barely have any kind of world building. It's mostly just like a sense of history as opposed to any kind of like script or lore. I just like building. I like talking to the community. I'm usually talking artistically about what I'm doing visually, and from a 3D perspective and from a player experience, as opposed to like creating some sort of story. So I'd take a much more laid back approach to Minecraft.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think there's always going to be bits of everything. Obviously, there are so many different formats that have arisen and been popular in recent years. You think about like 100 Days videos, formats like that tend to come and go, whether it's like, narrative stuff that's happening on a server, whether it's scripted or improvised. You get that happening often on Twitch now, where people have like roleplay servers for Minecraft and things like that, but that's by no means a new phenomenon. If you take a look back at the early days of Minecraft, like the Shadow of Israfel series by the Yogscast was hugely popular back in the Minecraft alpha days, and that was scripted. Later on, people start to want more authenticity and reliability, and so things move towards SMP and single player content. Hermitcraft becomes popular. Hermitcraft Season 11, I think, is more popular than ever. Like, you'd be hard-pressed to find a season of Hermitcraft that is not as widely beloved as this one is. And so, like, that's showing a pretty clear trend towards people just hanging out on an SMP and building cool stuff. Obviously, the stuff they're doing expands in scale and scope because they have the tools now in which they can create massive landscapes and things like that and import schematics into the world. But there are still people who are just hustling away, enjoying the grind and making stuff like that. I feel like hardcore only really got huge when Filzer died in his 5-year world. The clip went viral and became the most viewed like viral clip on Twitch. Like, it's an evolving landscape, but it always has been. And so Like, either you stick to your guns, you stick to whatever the format is that you prefer, and you wait for the trends to kind of come back around to you, or you recognize that things are going to take a little bit of a dip for a while, and if you want to start moving with some of those trends, you have the opportunity to do that. But I think, honestly, Minecraft is big enough that it contains all of these things and still somehow has room for more. So, as Joel said, maybe the people that you are into are making videos that are following a different kind of format. People are still innovating in this space. People are still coming up with new stuff to do. And the survival game is always going to be at the heart of that. So that's what people are going to return to if they feel like they need a fresh start again. So moving into questions that are more concerning the podcast itself, this first question comes in from Jonathan saying, "Happy 400th episode. I'm super happy that you make content I've been enjoying on Spotify and in Spotify comments. Another user said that Joel should label each floor in the wings of the command center north, east, south, and west, and then add a number so the second floor on the north wing would be N1, and so on and so forth. You should definitely have more guests on the podcast, and what else are you looking forward to?" Jonathan got lost trying to find the exit in Joel's base and promptly died.
I saw this comment. I will definitely think about it. I do read all the comments on Spotify. I don't answer everything, but I do see them all because I generally have to like make sure that they're all appropriate and stuff like that. So, but it's cool to see people having like their own conversation over there too. I chime in where I can, especially if it's like a direct question or something that's important to address. Sometimes I don't because it's like, oh, I'm going to talk about that on the podcast this week, so like I don't want to like kind of snipe my own little remarks in the comments. We are definitely open to more guests. I think guests are one of the things that really help spice up the show from time to time. It's great to get people's perspectives. I'm always sad when there's a cool guest that I'm not here for. So, having Soup for Eloise on was cool, but it's like, I missed that one because I was sick. So that's something I do look forward to. And as far as other people, I like the idea of having some techie players on. The trick, of course, is having a guest on that suits both the podcast vibe, but also kind of the zeitgeist of what's happening with Minecraft at the time. So if there's a big techie update, it makes sense to have a techie person that's going to be excited for and maybe better understand that update than maybe you and I might. Even though we're both pretty savvy, I think someone that's really deep in the tech side of Minecraft would have a better understanding about what that would really mean for like the greater tech community. And so that's how we try to line up our guests.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really fun to have guests on in future with more of a variety of disciplines. Like, I've said this several times when we've discussed this internally with our Patreon community. We don't necessarily want this to just be ticking off all of the people on Hermitcraft and Minecraft content creators in general. It's really fun to have folks like Adam Clark, who came on to talk about using Minecraft in an educational context, and having the developers on is obviously great for insight into the game itself and the direction that it's headed. And there are even opportunities for like interview stuff like that to happen outside of the podcast. Like when I recently got to talk to Lady Agnes, but we couldn't line that up as a podcast interview because they had their own sort of ideas for what that format should be. So I think it's going to be fun to have future interviews with people, but it really depends on when those folks arise, when their sort of moment in the spotlight makes the most sense, and when it can be a fun discussion for all of us to have on the show.
The next email comes in from Cosmic. Hey, I know them. Probably the longest community member that we've had, I would argue, and a landscape artist member in our Patreon. Firstly, congratulations on 400 episodes, an absolutely wild achievement. It feels like just yesterday you were celebrating 300 episodes, and the video version of the podcast was a new thing. My question for you is, thinking back to the previous 399 episodes, don't do that, Cosmic, I can't remember back that far. Is there something that stands out for you as, wow, I'm so proud of this kind of moment? Thank you both for all of the amazing content, podcast and otherwise, you put out into the world. It's a pleasure to be a part of your communities. Cosmic snuck on the server and redecorated Joel's command center with pink blocks. Joel was delighted with the changes. That's false.
You recognize that's that's now signed into law because you've read it out on a podcast.
People will edit that to make it sound true, and I will find you. I will let you know. Yes. I think I really liked, as far as big tentpole moments, talking with Sliced Lime on the show. First of all, finding out that Sliced Lime was listening to the show, and then we had them on, and same with Ulraf. And hearing that the Mojang devs, or some of them, listened to the show was just ridiculously cool. Like it's something you kind of hope happens, but you don't want to say out loud in case it sounds really you sound full of yourself if if you put that out into the universe. But to just have it happen naturally, I'm just like, oh crap, okay, like, well, that's good to know. So that's a fun feather in the cap, I think. And interviewing Minecraft content creators that I've looked up to for a long time. I don't want to name drop a whole bunch of people, but Impulse SV from Hermitcraft, someone that I watched from my very, very early on days of knowing what Hermitcraft was. They were one of the creators I just kind of said, yeah, I'm going to watch Impulse. And then having Impulse be on the show more than once, then you and I guesting on the Imp and Skids podcast. And I remember this specifically from that interview where we were explaining our process about recording in the morning, you go and edit the audio, and then we publish in the afternoon. And Skiz and Impulse could not fathom that we put the show out the same day. Like they were just like, wait, what? How is that possible? And I just thought like that was a really cool moment, because like it's the people that you see in the industry and you look up to for a long time, and you look at, doing the same sort of thing that you're doing. And then you offer a way of doing something that they just did not think was possible, or certainly not how they approached it. And so I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm probably most proud of, aside from when we've covered the interview stuff already, is the fact that we've now been making video episodes for like over 100 episodes. We started formally on episode 300, but we were trying out the video format with our patrons before that. And I think we've got it down to a fine art now, but I think it's worth looking back at the first few hundred episodes of our show and thinking how opposed we were to using video as a format. I feel like that takes a bit of like introspection and growth as far as like the format of things, and not being stubborn and sticking to our guns about that stuff, trying new things and allowing yourself to be influenced by trends and doing stuff for the better. I think it makes a lot of sense to do that in the context of this being such a long-running show. And so I'm proud of us in that respect for taking the leap to being a video podcast and still being able to put out the podcast so consistently. I think that was one of the things that when we were looking at the possibilities of starting a Minecraft podcast, one of the things we wanted was consistency, just because of how inconsistent other shows had been who tried to do a Minecraft show. And so I think that made a lot of sense when we were transitioning to video, to be like, no, we're keeping the routine the same. We just have to like, add a little bit of extra lead time for video editing and stuff, and that's really it. So yeah, I'm proud of how far we've come so far, and I'm proud that we plan to continue as we've already begun. Moving on to Ryan Murphy, who I know is a friend of yours, writes in saying, hello, Johnny and Joel. Ryan writing an email for episode 400 with my son, Caden. He's been working on his piano skills, and something that keeps him invested is finding music to play that matches his current interests. Caden was wondering if there is piano sheet music for the Spawn Chunks intro theme that Johnny composed. Thanks for all you do, and congrats on episode 400. Ryan died falling down a tunnel that led to a very cool but unfinished secret lair. Caden noticed the tunnel and avoided the fall, but then died because he hit the new sulfur spikes. Well, the family that plays Minecraft together dies together. That's what we say. So if you're right with me handling this one, because it's
absolutely.
about the music. I don't have piano sheet music for it. In fact, I think that theme, which was composed independently of the Spawn Chunks, but I was like, hey, I have this piece of music I haven't done anything with. Let me have the opportunity to use it for the show. I composed it on an old laptop that I don't think operates anymore, because it's my old MacBook that I used to use before I switched to the MacBook Pro. And it's also, frankly, in a style that's difficult to reproduce on other instruments. It's chiptune is what it's called. It kind of relies on sounds that conventional instruments don't make, and piano is like, it's a lot of, held notes and chords and everything. And I feel like the way I've composed this didn't really have that in mind. I wasn't playing it into the program in a traditional piano keyboard way either. It was originally composed in Logic Studio using the on-screen keyboard that allows you to either input notes live or draw them onto a timeline, basically. And so that's what I was doing. It was a combination of those two things, but the keyboard that I'm playing it on is actually a computer keyboard, just with the white and black notes of a piano keyboard for about an octave and a half, just displayed on screen with the key corresponding to whichever note you're trying to play, which is an interesting way to input notes, especially for somebody who is a trained pianist. I am not, which is one of the reasons that I'm not typically composing with piano in mind. With that said, though, learning to pick up music by ear is a really useful skill for musicians. So if Caden is, still in the process of learning the piano, and as he continues to learn, he'll probably find that he's able to jam along to music like that and figure out a rough piano version, even if it's not like every single note possible, because there might be more notes than it's possible to actually reach all at the same time for a single piano player. I think you'd be able to at least come up with like this or that chord kind of fits in here and play along to it in a fun way. So my advice really is listen to it and make it your own.
That's really cool. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with the track and I've heard the whole thing, but it's just also hearing how you made it and the process behind it is really, really cool. And I remember that's how I played guitar as a teenager. We would learn how to play songs just by listening to them by ear. I would take a song in from a popular band to my bass player instructor and just we would figure it out together. And that was part of like the lesson was like hearing what notes go where and like, is that really the bass guitar or are you hearing something else? Like, is that a keyboard in the background? Like how to separate out the melody and the harmony from another. It's great advice too. That's really, really cool. I'll have to follow up with Ryan to see if Caden figures it out. Cause if you do, let us know.
Yeah. So like send us a video of you playing along to it. If you feel like doing it, it'd be fun.
One more email from Thor of Asgard. Hello, Pix and Joel. I've been a faithful listener of the podcast since the early double-digit episodes, but recently I've been wondering about the origin of the podcast. How did the podcast come to be, and who got the idea, who reached out to who, and so on. Thor of Asgard buried himself in ancient audio files, never to be seen again. We've told this story before. I don't know if we've told it on the podcast proper, maybe on episode 300. But the Cole's Notes version is that after I got into Minecraft, I was a fan of Pixel Riffs. I was watching his videos. And I had the idea for a Minecraft podcast because I've been podcasting for 15 or 20 years. So more than, the length of the Spawn Chunks. And I knew that I didn't have the bandwidth for it just on my own. Like I would need someone to help me out with it. Plus I was so new to Minecraft. Like I kind of felt weird trying to do a podcast about it. And after discovering Pix on YouTube, I thought that Pix might be interested in doing something like that. So I thought, well, how do I approach this? So I asked Pix to come on the Citadel Cafe to hang out and hang out on that show. Part of it was like, I just wanted to talk to Pix as a fan. But then I also thought, well, it'd be a good test of like gauging how we get along and seeing if he's interested in podcasting. And it turns out yes to all of the above. And so that summer I pitched the idea for the Minecraft podcast for the Spawn Chunks. And we started it that August. Like it was really, I would say like a February to August kind of like get to know you, pitch the idea timeframe, if you remember that correctly.
Yeah, it was definitely February because I was over in the States at the time visiting my partner's family for their grandma's 90th birthday. And it came up, I think, as just like a tag on Twitter where you tagged me in an episode where you were just talking about my videos. And so I got in touch via Twitter, I'm pretty sure, or maybe just DM'd you and said, hey, like, thank you for mentioning me on the show. I'm up for it if you want to like have a chat sometime once I'm back in the UK and back in my office. And so, that's how we got to talking. And from there, your podcast expertise is something that I've leaned on because I don't know a whole lot about the process of podcast distribution outside of platforms like YouTube. I now know a little bit more about the back end of it, thanks to what you've told me. But like you already had the experience to lay down, like, this is where we need to upload it. And here's how an RSS feed will work and, distribute that. And then it was really just about what else the two of us could bring to the table. So yeah, it was a fun time and, has obviously led to us doing this show for 8 years at this point. So yeah, happy that it started the way it did.
It's such a fun idea of like taking something like Minecraft and then getting two creatives together and then making something completely different. Like it's not like we haven't really even played Minecraft together that often. We've probably got more hours in Minecraft Dungeons together than we do in Minecraft together, minus the tour of West Hill, right? So like it just the fact that we can just get together and talk about it is really, really cool. And I also have to say, I really enjoy it when we can have you on the Citadel Cafe as well. Like it's always really fun. I find for us now spending so much time working on the Spawn Chunks together and talking about Minecraft to kind of like hang up our work jackets and then go talk about
Yeah.
sci-fi and fantasy or like some other kind of really nerdy stuff that we're into, but like not Minecraft. It really feels like outside of work. It feels like hanging out like beyond the water cooler, which is nice.
Yeah, I think there was an episode of the Citadel Cafe that I even came on to talk about Dungeons and Dragons around the time I started playing it. It was me, you,
Yes.
and Megan Townsend were like,
Yes, I remember
we
that.
had like
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
D&D roundtable episode, which I think is really fun to look back on now that I've done so much more in that space. And yeah, it's fun to look back at the early history of the Spawn Chunks as a collaborative project. Speaking of which, let's take another trip down memory lane because a curious player has a question. I've watched every episode of the Spawn Chunks and I'm happy about the arrival of episode 400. I think your podcast is a really specific one and I've not yet gotten to know why it's named the Spawn Chunks. Why is it called that and what inspired you to make the podcast? The podcast is amazing. Keep doing it. A curious player who wonders if the Spawn Chunks are non-existent because the Spawn Chunks are non-existent in my world.
I have a hard time remembering because I think we came to this name really quickly. I feel like
Yeah.
the idea was we wanted some sort of entry point. And at the time, there were other Minecraft podcasts that were very inconsistent or very old, and also like vulgar or aimed at a more of an adult audience and not accessible to as many people. And so a lot of those also had some version of like Minecraft or blank craft in their name.
Yeah.
And so we didn't want to emulate that. Plus, it just didn't seem like it was that imagined as a name. Like, but because I mean, those were early podcasts. So like to have a podcast start in 2018, like it felt like we could come up with a better name than just like calling it something craft. And so we were bouncing around ideas, and I don't know who suggested the Spawn Chunks. I think we were just like trying to think up things related to the game that would work as a potential title. Do you remember?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, my one chunk tutorial series was one of the things that had gotten some traction on YouTube at that point,
Right.
because
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
starting the podcast around the same time I was starting the Minecraft Survival Guide. So I was hovering around like 40,000, 50,000 subscribers purely on the basis of my one chunk tutorial series being really popular. And so we wanted something that included chunks in the name to maybe draw a bit of that association, but it was a name that didn't feel too inherently Minecrafty in case we needed to pivot things away from Minecraft later, in the same way that Pixel Riffs isn't necessarily a Minecraft-related name, and like a lot of my branding and stuff, I try and keep it fairly game agnostic, just in case for whatever reason Minecraft is not the thing in future. But also the Spawn Chunks is the first, like, your starter area in your world. A lot of the time it's where people make their first base, and so we decided, I think it felt like home. It felt like, you know, your starting point for jumping off into the rest of the world of Minecraft. And so to have that be part of the vibe of the show, that sort of welcoming, you know, here is your starting point kind of thing, was part and parcel of it for me, at least. And at first, I think I knocked around the idea of there being like a little narrated intro each time, where it's like, you know, the mists of the render distance part, and in the distance you see your hosts for today, Pixel Riffs and Joel Duggan, working on some stuff around Spawn. And then you were like, I just wanted to keep it kind of a bit more formal than that, and a bit more kind of following the format of shows like Daily Tech News Show and what you'd already done on the Citadel Cafe. And so it ended up being like a little bit more kind of professional feeling than like narratively done. We definitely worked our way into the Spawn Chunks rather than it sort of occurring like a bolt from the blue. Like, we spent some time in a Google Doc brainstorming it and just decided that felt like the most welcoming name for the show. And then they removed the Spawn Chunks from the game. But they did that a lot more recently. And it's funny that happened, but the name is so like tied to the identity of the show at this point that I don't think we want to confuse everybody, frankly, by renaming it at this stage.
And the other thing that I do remember, because this would have been like certainly not my first rodeo in terms of launching a podcast. I've done a number of shows over the years that just never took off. Co-hosts didn't have time, that kind of thing. I do remember when we narrowed down the name that I typed it into an online tool, and everything from Twitter to Instagram to Twitch to .com was all available. So when you don't have to have like the Spawn Chunks podcast on Twitter and the spawnchunks.com on the website and the Spawn Chunks Minecraft podcast on Instagram, like when you can just have the one name across everywhere, you kind of go with the one that's going to be the easiest to talk to people about and the easiest to say and the easiest. I mean, it also it spells like it sounds too. It's not like a unique, weird thing in Minecraft where people are trying to figure out like how to spell it or how to, use it. So I think it's pretty straightforward that way. And there's been lots of fun organic stuff that has come out of it too. Like I like the stay chunky line and all that kind of stuff is fun. That's kind of just organically sprung out over the years.
Even the way we named the render distance doesn't necessarily feel like solely a Minecraft concept, which fits that part of the show, because we don't really talk about Minecraft all that much in at least the pre-show part of the render distance. So it can really just be a bit more broad than that. But yeah, that is more or less the genesis of the name of the show.
We're going to get into some Minecraft questions now. And we've got the first one from Skylar Cooper. Hi guys, have you ever tried the Blockbench plugins for Minecraft? Is it for Java and Bedrock and is under the creator tools in the Bedrock tab? Happy 400th, Skylar Cooper. I have used Blockbench as a separate app for Java Minecraft. I used it to remodel the early tables and chairs models for the tables and chairs data pack. And I thought it was pretty easy to use. I wanted to make something that felt a little bit more vanilla. It was fun, minimalist way to do some modeling. I had some experience with 3D modeling from my time in TV, working in animation, so it was easy for me to pick up. But I thought it was pretty straightforward. I think anybody that takes a little bit of time, watched a YouTube tutorial, I think you'd be able to work with it. And I like the fact that I could easily kind of translate what I wanted to do in Minecraft into Blockbench. So I've used it very little, but it was fun when I used it. Have you messed around with anything like that?
Not really, and I think it mostly comes down to the fact that I don't modify Minecraft in general all that much. Like, I'm not really... I'm not the most gifted artistically either, so I'm not somebody who looks at Minecraft's textures and goes, I know exactly how I would make those better. I tend to leave that to folks like you, folks like the other artists in the community who've messed with textures before, and I've obviously worked with stuff that was modeled in Blockbench. I'm pretty sure the Minecraft team themselves even uses it to prototype a lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't tend to modify a great deal about Minecraft's appearance, and so that includes not having had the chance to work with Blockbench much. But who knows? That might be something that I adopt as a possibility for the future. So we'll have to wait and see. Watch this space. Next email comes in from Christy, who says, I love the podcast, been listening for 2-3 years now, been a member for a year or so. I've been playing Minecraft since its early days. It cost $15 when we bought it. I still think bunnies are new. Anyway, I've been thinking about this for a while now. Why not let the players have a larger inventory? I think it would be great if things in chests or bundles or ender chests stacked to 64, but the player's inventory stacks to 999 or something. That way the player could hold everything they want, but the inventory is more manageable. I'm sure there are some redstone workings I don't understand that would need to be reworked. Huge fan of the show. Congrats on episode 400. Christy died carrying thousands of cakes. Well, thank you, Christy, and thank you for being a landscape artist member of our Discord as well. I do think there is something to be said for the consistency of how things work in Minecraft, and especially if things like chests and bundles and whatnot stack to 64, it gets more confusing for the tactile folks, for the people who like really feel their way through Minecraft rather than think about it too logically. And for new players especially, if you were carrying around a stack of like 1,000 items in your inventory and that's only taking up one slot, but then you try to move it to a chest and suddenly that's like 2/3 of the chest, I feel like that would get confusing kind of quickly. And so while I recognize how inconvenient it can feel to do that sometimes, it's frankly just way more logical in the 3D space that you're trying to operate it in, that stack sizes and things work that way.
Yeah, having thousands of blocks in your inventory to me would just be choice paralysis. Like if I could carry everything with me, then I feel like some of the decisions I'm forced to make in Minecraft are because I can only carry so much and I have to like think about what I'm doing and approach a build in a certain way. Plus that's kind of just like creative mode, right? So like I don't want that experience in survival Minecraft either. I've mentioned before that like having a separate space for your tools would free up some inventory space and alleviate some pressure. But speaking to the stack size though, I do think that some things that are arbitrarily stacked at 16 could maybe be updated. Like why can I only make 16 signs when I want to use a lot more than 16 signs, right? If I'm using them decoratively or if I'm making a farm where I'm using signs to like hold up water or lava or something, and I need like a stack or two of signs. Like, why can't I just make a stack or two of signs? That seems strange to me, especially because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the new shelf stacks to 64.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah, I
that's
think it
more
does.
complicated than a sign. So stuff like that is weird. Honey bottles, buckets, ender pearls. There's some practical stuff that just like I'm not sure why they don't stack to 64. Um, but yeah, I think that in a game like Satisfactory, where they increased the stack size to help players have more in their inventory, there is not nearly the variety in Satisfactory of items to place that there is in Minecraft. So it makes sense that you can just carry more, but you're carrying more of the same thing. You're not carrying more as terms of a variety. And so I think that with Minecraft having like that 64-bit look, that having the 64 stack texture, stack size makes sense thematically. Like I don't, it doesn't bother me that we can't have a stack of 100. Like I don't think I want that. What I do like in Minecraft though is when you can condense stacks. So things like, lapis or iron, like that's the kind of inventory condensing that I like, when you can use the crafting mechanism in the game to carry more than just the individual stack of items.
Yeah, resource blocks are like really handy as a
Yeah.
means to carry a lot of stuff around. I still carry stacks of logs and then break them down into planks and realize, oh, I have 4 times as much inventory like now
Yeah.
than I did before. Likewise, like if I'm going out to the end, I'll bring like a stack of logs and then that converts into slabs that I can use to bridge with, and suddenly I have 8 stacks of slabs. It's like, there's
Yeah.
mathematically there's a lot of that stuff that can really benefit you. And I feel like that's the core knowledge of Minecraft, that after you realize some of that stuff works the way it does, that feels like learning. That feels like you've leveled up in your understanding of the game. And so, yeah, some of that is taken away or lost by reverting stack sizes to something much larger. And I think the 64 being a stack is just one of those odd, like iconic Minecraft things that's just taken for granted at this stage, but probably had a reason at some point or other, and at this stage just feels too iconic to really change.
It would be a fun gag in the next Minecraft movie if someone had a stack of 64 things and someone tried to put a 65 on top and it just moved to the side.
Yeah.
Just kept on, wouldn't let you go any farther. Like, I'm not sure. It could be addressed in a funny way, I think. Our next email comes in from Arizan. I think Minecraft should make a new dimension for after the end with new biomes like enchanted forests, or maybe a biome that always has a natural disaster happening, new mobs like more skeletons and zombie types, or just completely new types, and new materials better than netherite, and maybe have special effects and a new boss. What is your opinion? Arizan was electrocuted trying to program the new dimension. This is a lot. That's a lot to think about in terms of the end. We may get a hint of something that's beyond the end in Minecraft Dungeons too, because they're kind of hinting that there might be something in the Ancient City portal. So keep your fingers crossed for a new dimension. I don't know what the content would be like, but I can see a new dimension. The only thing I would caution about would be having a new dimension as fleshed out as Arizan's email before the end is touched in any kind of update would feel really weird, I think, to players.
Yeah, I agree. I think the end is currently a blank slate, and so anytime anybody considers adding something outside of that, you think, well, why wasn't this just added to the end in the first place? I also think the end should remain a vital part of progression, and so I like the idea of this new dimension only being accessible through the end or with resources that you have to get from the end. Maybe the dragon egg would unlock it, maybe something to do with End City ships could unlock it. A really cool idea, and I like the idea that it also has a progression step in that as well. Like, in order to reach a higher height of technology from what we have already, having something better than netherite out there, having something that's a greater challenge that needs to be overcome with resources from that dimension, that feels like a meaningful way to add to Minecraft gameplay, instead of it just being a new dimension that you mine for resources that you bring back to the overworld. I think it would have to be something that expanded on gameplay that we have already and brought something new to the table. So there's a lot of good ideas out there, but yeah, like Joel, I'm very curious to see what Minecraft Dungeons 2 does with the Ancient City portal and see if any of that really feels like it fits with what we know of vanilla Minecraft. James writes in with a very simple question. What are you planning on doing with the new sulfur cubes?
So I know that everybody's looking forward to knocking them around in mini games and things like that, but I'm curious to see if I can use them in building in some way, moving them in a way that I can't maneuver a current block that stays on the grid, maybe using them to create an angle somewhere or a texture that looks cool. It's going to be limited because they're going to create that kind of like creamy yellow color overlay to everything. But in a sci-fi context with what I'm doing right now, I'm kind of wondering whether there's something I can do there. And then also adding any kind of dynamic movement. Like if I can control like the up and down or the side to side and create something where they're moving around that looks cool and incorporate that into a build, that could be really fun too. Especially if it's something that can't be achieved with another thing. Like I could run a minecart behind a wall with a slit cut in the wall with slabs to like block light or create some sort of movement, but I can't really do that vertically. So if I could create some sort of like cascade by bouncing them on pistons or doing something that makes them look interesting and cool from a building perspective, I think that could be kind of fun.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in using them to add more life and animation to bases. I expect I'll probably find some way of using them in the Windy City, and whether that's them kind of flying through the air in the way that most blocks can't. There are obviously some blocks that can be moved around by like slime blocks, and anything that's affected by gravity can be messed with in fun ways like that. But that's a way of having like logs flying through the air inside of a sulfur cube and things like that. I like that idea a lot. So I'm hoping to just find unique ways of implementing them in a single player world that doesn't necessarily mean using them for mini games, since I'm the only one playing in that world, but using them to add animation and life to a base seems like a natural way of using them in a single player world like that.
Next email comes from Looped Coyote. Hi, Pix and Joel. Congrats on 400 episodes. I just wanted to say hi from the world of peaceful players. I found combat a little bit too stressful, so I mostly play in peaceful mode. I enjoy the challenge of acquiring all of my materials and building fully in survival just without anything attacking me. I augment this with occasionally switching to easy mode when I'm in a safe place just to get certain materials. I have farms for blaze, skeletons, and shulkers so far. One additional challenge I could take on is hunger. I have all this food and not much to do with it. I've also heard of more advanced players mentioning that hunger is just an annoyance and they wish they could turn it off. So from two very different perspectives, I think a hunger toggle in the settings would be nice and not have it considered a quote-unquote cheat. Looped Coyote drowned in a sea of beef left over from acquiring all the leather needed for enchanting.
Too many times have I nearly drowned in a sea of beef. I think there is a way of doing this, but it's still a little bit intrusive. Like if you wanted to run like a command that gave you saturation infinitely, and you can do that in such a way that it doesn't constantly have the potion particles around you. That is one way of eliminating hunger as a factor entirely. But like you said, it does involve like tampering with the back end of Minecraft a little bit, in a similar way that a game rule would, but a game rule might just make it a little bit neater. I do think that, for some people, hunger is always just going to get in the way rather than be a challenge. And there are definitely points later on in Minecraft, especially when you reach that point where you have a lot of control over a survival world, but you still just have to eat golden carrots every so often. And I can see that becoming an annoyance for some people. For me, it's just one of those background things that I don't really think about much anymore, but I can see how to other folks it would be an inconvenience, and how for peaceful players, they might want it the other way around.
Yeah, I can speak to the inconvenience because working on such a large build, as the command center, when I'm running to my shulkers and realize that I'm hungry and I have to stop what I'm doing, which is to go get a block that I'm excited to place or try, eat a couple of carrots before I can resume running again because I'm too slow. I do find it kind of annoying. It's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit of hunger is not threatening to me as an end game player. Like I feel it's something I have to do in survival just because it's a game mechanic, but it's not something that I manage or have to work at. Like every couple of streams I have to go get a stack of carrots from a villager. Like it's really not difficult, but it doesn't add anything to the game for me. So I do find it a little bit annoying in that way. There are some mods. I looked for data packs on modrinth.com, but I didn't really find anything specifically to what Looped Coyote was asking for. But there are some mods on modrinth.com that completely change hunger or change saturation or change the way that it all works. One of them was either a mod or a data pack that changed your saturation every time you slept. So as long as you were sleeping through the night, which a lot of builders do to be able to see what they're doing, you were not going to get hungry. Like it would get reset the next day. And so for me, what happens is that like I go and I build for like 2 or 3 Minecraft days, and then I end up being hungry because I've jumped off of walls or I've done something, and I've slept a couple of times, but that doesn't reset my hunger. But this mod did. And so you might want to explore some of the stuff at modrinth.com if you're open to modding the game, because I mean, if you're bouncing back and forth between peaceful and easy mode every now and again, then adding a mod that kind of controls something like that doesn't really affect you as a peaceful player, then that might be something that's worth checking out.
Yeah, definitely worth considering for sure. Kepler is our next emailer. As someone who got reintroduced to Minecraft fairly recently after my son started playing, we've enjoyed finding new content creators to watch when we aren't playing. We started off watching Pix's Survival Guide series and have since jumped to also following creators like Gemini Tay, Smallish Beans, B-Dubs, and Zedaf. As folks who seem pretty in tune to the Minecraft content creator space, are there any lesser known or upcoming content creators that you'd like to shout out? Alternatively, are there any old series from more established creators you enjoyed that you would recommend a watch through? Kepler fell into lava being distracted by content on his second monitor while digging a giant hole. I've heard that scenario happen before. Episode 1 of Minecraft SOS is calling me. But yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like I tend to get stuck into the same Minecraft content creators these days, mostly because most of the content I watch on YouTube is for Hermitcraft Recap. Like, I tend to watch the same creators a lot of the time for that. There are a couple of folks on Twitch who I've started dropping in on recently, and I will say this with a caveat that I can't remember exactly who's family-friendly and who's not, so keep that in mind. But Soup for Eloise, who we had on the show, is another one who's lovely, is currently playing on the Flight SMP, and on those kind of larger SMP projects, there's a lot of really fun collaborations between creators, so you'll usually find somebody fun to watch through that, and it's a very thematic thing. They've all got kind of characters that they're playing and that kind of thing. If that's not your jam, if you want a hardcore survival player to look into, Jamal _ I think he is on Twitch, has been part of a couple of Hermitcraft events. I'm pretty sure he was one of the guests on the Hermitcraft MCC takeover that I was a part of, and has toured the Hermitcraft server with them before, I think as Joe Hills' guest. I've raided him a couple of times. Lovely, welcoming community, incredible builds, very passionate player, really good at like texturing and building long-term projects and stuff. So he's definitely one I would like to shout out. He's a really, really cool guy.
I will point you towards someone who's not necessarily lesser known, but they're definitely relatively new to Minecraft, and that's Liz with 2 Z's. They're playing Minecraft with no spoilers, completely blind for the first time. They're several months into it now, but it's really fun to watch her videos as she discovers stuff. Really works hard to not get any spoilers from chat. So if you're not someone that can keep your mouth shut when watching live, just watch the YouTube videos and make sure you're kind and courteous in the comments. But it's really, really fun to watch. She's no stranger to video games. She plays all kinds of stuff. Mild kind of like adult language warning, perhaps more innuendo than not, but nothing crazy. She doesn't swear all the time. But if a creeper explodes and scares her, she might drop one. just FYI, might drop a swear. And then Sluta Builds is a content creator that I've recently followed. Again, I wouldn't say necessarily lesser known, but like someone that I don't hear talked about in some of the current circles. And they're a real live architect, and they build really cool, imaginative things in creative mode in Minecraft, and then do a time-lapse video, and then go back and talk over their creative process, the architectural things that they were considering, all the different decisions that they were making while you watch the very accessible, like 20 to 30 minute video. And they're really cool builds. So I would check that out. Sluda, SLUDA builds. We'll have links in the show notes for this week too. Next email is from Alejandro. Hello, Johnny and Joel. It would be fun to explore verticality a little bit more in Minecraft, especially in the end. Imagine islands with structures of floating and built limit height as well as near the void. Y-level dependent vertical biomes would also be great here, as well as some more flying hostile and passive mobs. Let the dropping and gliding dogfights ensue. Alejandro fell from a high place. I would imagine that would happen an awful lot. Alejandro wants to take the fear of phantoms to the next level for everybody.
Yep.
I love the idea of going vertical. It reminds me of the floating islands in like Avatar, that first movie that James Cameron did. I just don't know how frustrating it would be for players to have all that happen over the void. Like if you could land and not like guarantee to lose all your stuff, like potentially go back and collect like an exploded corpse or something with all of your gear, fine. But I like the idea of having something flying around aggressively and taking you out in the skies while you're over nothing. I feel like that would get frustrating for players really, really fast.
Yeah, no, I agreed. Flying mobs really have to be taken very carefully, I think, after the advent of the Phantom. But I do like the idea of expanding the end dimension to include more verticality. I've seen some, whether they're mods or data packs, that effectively introduce stuff like amplified terrain generation to end islands, and the results are always really spectacular, provided that you have elytra to fly through them first. I feel like the problem is reaching elytra before you end up uncovering all of the terrain that's going to be much more navigatable once you have access to flight. But maybe Happy Ghasts even the score there, since you can bring them to the end. It sort of varies, I think, on your approach overall. But yeah, I think it's neat to have the end still out there as a blank canvas, and I do agree that verticality in Minecraft is something that has existed in various game modes and in various biomes, but isn't always fully explored to the fullest of its potential. I think the reason for some of that, though, is so that it gives players the opportunity to build that stuff. And like with a lot of stuff in Minecraft, while we expect the base game to have enough appeal, I think part of the challenge of Minecraft and part of the gameplay of Minecraft is to start building the stuff you want to see in the world. And if this idea inspires you to build your own version of that out in the end, time consuming though it may be, I think it'll be worth the challenge. So maybe give it a go modeling some of that stuff yourself and see what you can come up with. Next up, Loic Burchell has written in to ask, do you play Minecraft with add-ons?
They're technically mods and data packs because I'm on Java, not Bedrock. But yes, the Citadel has a number of mods for performance, but also some gameplay mods like changing the camera to function separately with free cam, as well as like Zero's maps for like mini maps and world maps. I try not to change gameplay as much as I can. Like I really try to keep it as vanilla as possible because that's what we talk about on the show. But then I also have some data packs. Most of them are crafting, again, for that convenience of like condensing blocks into inventory shapes. I do have a couple of data packs that add 3D aspects to things like trapdoors, doors, sugarcane, stuff like that, mushrooms, but really light on the add-ons and things like that. It's mostly, the big mods are mostly like performance stuff for shaders and rendering and speed, and because the Citadel is not a huge server, so we try to get the most out of it that we can. So that's basically what we run on the Citadel. In my Twitch chat, I don't remember the link off the top of my head, but if you're ever in my Twitch chat live, there's a command where you can see a spreadsheet of all the mods and data packs that we run on the server, just because it gets asked a lot in chat, and so I have a link to a spreadsheet in Twitch chat.
As far as the Minecraft Survival Guide goes, I take some amount of pride in it being a completely vanilla Minecraft instance. The most it ever gets modified is if I add a resource pack that removes some of the more obstructive elements of the UI, like the shield, which I carry with me a lot, typically gets lowered, and sometimes I'll lower the fire animation if I'm on fire so I can see a little bit more of what's going on the screen. Outside of that, no mods, no data packs, anything like that. Completely unmodified, even in terms of game rules as well. And that's just because I want to give the experience of playing Minecraft in the default way, in the way that most people would get if they just loaded up Minecraft and hit new game without really knowing what any of the extra stuff means. But yeah, as far as add-ons for Bedrock Edition, I have very limited experience. I've mostly played like preset maps and stuff that might have included their own add-ons in the package of those, but I don't typically play Bedrock enough to have experimented with add-ons beyond the stuff that made Minecraft RTX and vibrant visuals possible.
A little bit more behind the scenes from Devo XD. I've recently switched from Bedrock on PS5 to Java on PC. I was wondering what keyboard layouts you guys use to make Minecraft better. I'm on a Windows keyboard, and the only thing I really changed is I have left Alt as my sprint. I just find that easier to hit with my thumb. And V is what I use to drop an item because I just used to hit Q far too often by mistake. So I switched that to V. I also have the F3 debug screen, which would be probably new to you as a Java player, on a thumb button on my mouse. Just because if I'm mapping out coordinates, just it's easier to just click it on and off with just a thumb switch. So that's the only real big changes I've made.
The main change I make is to rebind the F5 change perspective key to R so that it's nice and accessible if I've still got my hand on WASD, so I don't have to use a second hand or take my hand off the movement controls to change perspective. If a creeper is following me, I can see it behind me. The other major thing is more a thing about my keyboard itself than the actual layout, in that the keyboard that I use, I can kind of hold it up so you can see there, has a non-standard feature, which is a rotary knob in the top right-hand corner, and that is programmed to do a left click if I turn it left and a right click if I turn it right. So if you ever see me placing scaffolding and I place a stack of scaffolding really quickly, it's because I've got my hand on that knob in the top right hand corner and I've just like cranked it a few times, and that right clicks much faster than you can right click with a mouse, because mouse inputs are actually like kind of evened out to make sure that you're not just spamming at 60 hertz whenever you hold down the right click button on a mouse. You can probably do different stuff with different mice, but the model of mouse I have doesn't allow that. So I have a button on the keyboard that does that instead of rebinding a key, and that ends up being really useful when it comes to building large walls. If I kind of swift sneak along and just kind of turn that every so often to place blocks, you can get a wall built really quickly. You can build a tower of scaffolding really quickly. Bunch of fun stuff you can do with it.
I think we've got time for 2 more emails from Tom and Connor. So you want to grab Tom's?
Perfect. The next email comes in from Tom. He says, what if the end got a day-night cycle when you defeated the Ender Dragon? I've always thought that the end could be the perfect place for players to do endgame stuff if it wasn't for all that eternal darkness. When you beat the game, you gain access to end gateways, elytra, shulker boxes, and infinite bland floating islands. This should be the perfect blank canvas for endgame builders if there was a little more light. What do you think? Tom fell into the void, but the view was good.
Again, with the void being both a positive and a negative. Like I like the appeal of this big empty space for survival players to build things in, especially if you want to do something space related. I definitely considered the end as a place to build some sci-fi stuff, but was worried about the end resetting with a potential update, and I just decided that doing something on a mushroom island would be better. I also would be nice to have the sunlight and have all that changes in the overworld from time to time with weather and stuff like that. I don't know that a traditional daylight cycle would be good in the end. However, I do like the idea of changing light. So maybe something like Aurora Borealis, some northern lights, or some sort of like luminous weather, like a gas storm or something. Nothing that would like interrupt your builds or cause any damage, but it would be really cool to see like this glowing green storm cloud go by and cast some light on your build, and then it would change to like something else, or maybe a planet or two rotates or something. Like I feel like some of the texture packs and resource packs that I've seen address the blanket of the end as something like, well, we could do some really cool lighting here. They've even started in vanilla Minecraft with some of the end flashes, which are not as dramatic as a daylight cycle, but you know, we'll see how that goes. But I think something more imaginative would be good. But I like the idea of having some sort of cycle.
I like the idea purely because when you kill the Ender Dragon for the first time, it says free the end, and the question is always free the end from what? Because the dragon wasn't really doing a whole bunch, maybe suppressing the existence of those gateways, but then you've got to kill the dragon a whole bunch more times in order to get the rest of the gateways to show up. So it would be really interesting if the dragon was physically holding back the day-night cycle. This feels like a very Elden Ring thing, because there's at one point there's a boss that you fight who is holding back the motion of the stars, and once you defeat him, it means that other events in the game can progress. And so, like, that's a really cool symbolic thing that could happen. as far as how it affects the end mechanically, gosh, I have no idea. Like, I have done experiments in the past where I brought a bunch of villagers out to the end just to prove that the end still followed the overworld's day-night cycle, because the villagers all go to sleep at the exact game ticks that they normally would in the overworld, even though, like, clocks still kind of move wildly in the end dimension because there is no day or night. So I think it would be cool if the end had some other sort of environmental thing that you could unlock by beating the dragon, and it wasn't just a, hey, here's a stepping stone to the next thing. Like, if it had a more fundamental feeling of release for the dimension in some way. But what form that takes, especially now we have the end flashes kind of taking place of the traditional like lighting effects that you get from a day-night cycle, I don't really know. So that could be a possibility for the future, but it's something the Minecraft team will have to settle on ultimately.
Our last email comes in from Connor. How many block variants do you typically include in a small, simple block palette? Example, how many different blocks of Minecraft, similar colors and texture, and how many different colors in a build? Thanks, Connor. I'll use my command center as an example. Most of what's happening inside right now is based on about 70% of your base color. So for me, it's quartz right now. Then I add in, say, 20% or so of another, usually high contrast color. I'll use cyan terracotta as a good example here. And so there's your kind of like 60 to 70%, and then another 20. And then the last little bit, the 5 to 10%, is where you want to put in accents, highlights, maybe a pop of color. And that's where I've got things like honey blocks or frog lights that are adding either orange or purple or whatever into the build. And I do tend to stick like that because it gives a nice way for the eye to find something interesting and cool to look at in terms of the shapes that you create with the contrast blocks or the lighting effects that you create and the pops of color with the high color blocks. But then there's a place for your eye to rest as well, which is what like the broad wall of quartz or the floor or the, you know, side of the ship or like whatever it is that you're building. I generally follow like the 70-30 rule for detail and for broad shapes, but then you can apply that with color too. Just have your main color be 70, your accent color be somewhere around 20, your contrasting color be somewhere around 20 or 30, and then bring in your last little bit for your accents and highlights and stuff like that.
I never think this analytically about stuff that I build. Is that a bad thing? I feel like a lot of the time I tend to just go, what does this feel like it needs? And it's a lot more instinctual, I guess. It's a little bit more kind of shoot from the hip. But if I'm thinking about it, if I want to build a simple block palette, I'd assume just like a small medieval house, something maybe the size like a little bit bigger than a village house. I would want like stone and something to texture that stone, ideally stone bricks and then maybe mossy stone brick as the grey sort of foundation, the base for it all. I'd want a second story that was made out of wood, and then you include sort of stairs and things in that, so you've got wood logs for beams, but then maybe stripped wood or wood planks for the rest of the exterior, and then do something different with the roof. So maybe like a mangrove roof where you've used oak wood for the walls, or a roof that's made out of moss like the starter house that I built on this season of Survival Guide. But I think typically if you think of a build in sections, I feel like each build is going to have multiple sections in it that can be their own sort of material palette in a way. Like this is the stone section, this is the wood section, this is the moss roof, and that's a pretty straightforward way to go. But it depends how you choose to build. If you're building from reference, it's always going to be about what colors you feel like suit the reference material, what shapes you can make with large areas of just one type of material. And we were talking earlier about Joel's command center and just the way large sections of that can all be the same type of material without too much texturing. I feel like there are a lot of different approaches, and so it's so difficult to narrow this down, but that's one of the things that makes Minecraft great, is the sheer amount of variety that you get and a variety of different approaches. So I don't think anything is really off the table when it comes to building these days. And that's where we're going to wrap up this episode of The Spawn Chunks. Thank you so much for celebrating episode 400 with us. Thank you for all of the emails, and apologies once again to the folks we couldn't get to, but maybe some of those emails will show up in future episodes of The Spawn Chunks. In the meantime, you can find more information about our show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today over at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you're getting some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can do that at patreon.com/thespawnchunks. Joining our community there by pledging at any of our paid tiers gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord, which has been a lively community ever since it was originally introduced and continues to be so. You can listen to the show live when we record it in Discord every Monday. We also have monthly and quarterly hangouts where we share behind-the-scenes stuff with our patrons and they get to let us know what they've been up to in Minecraft that month. We currently have 259 patrons, which is down one from last week, so we'd love to lift that number up again with episode 400. Special thanks forever go out to our content engineer patrons. That's Kinda Beald, Hunter555, Jumbo Sale, Mindtrip Media, and That Penguin Dude. And a shout out to Soma, the Southern Mam, who joined for an annual membership, supporting the show for a full year.
Sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. The podcast is free. Just tell a friend about the Spawn Chunks and where they can go to listen to it. The new episodes are available on Mondays on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. We are the Spawn Chunks on social media. We're very easy to track down. You can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. The RSS feed is linked on the spawnchunks.com, and the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page. That's where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
And we're going to be skipping the post-show because this episode has already gone on long enough, but thank you all so much for the support. It truly means a lot. My name is Johnny, online I go by Pixel Riffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently in its 3rd season. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for the aforementioned YouTube series. I'm the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search. And aside from that, I'm at Pixel Riffs on both Blue Sky and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I'm doing right now is focused on either the Citadel Cafe or Twitch. That is my other podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. Episode 504 is out. We talked about the Artemis mission. We talked about Star Wars Maul, Shadow Lord, and Daredevil boarding in Season 2. So you can find that on your favorite podcasting app. And then on Twitch, I am playing mostly Minecraft from Tuesday through Saturday, weekday mornings at 9, Saturdays at 1, working on the command center that you get updates for every week here on the show.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and long may it continue.